I'm still intrigued by everything that happened in that last presentation. There was so much going on.
Yeah, I for a moment, like whenever he was showing one of the specific artworks, I thought it was Danny DeVito. I'm not joking. Like I legit thought that like the guy with the big old wig was like Danny DeVito, and I was like, oh my gosh, my idol.
Oh, that 2D animation was incredible. They had so many things going on with it. You had the comic books. After that, you had the.
Whenever they actually like made the like models like just generated from like photos, like I feel like that would just make a modeler's job so much easier.
Oh yes, it could absolutely help so many people. Just make streamlining a process so much quicker. And he talked about at the end asking the questions how. Video games like, let's say Skyrim, going in and making all those buildings, if they could get just basic models, then they could have their animators come in and just do some touch-up work to make sure that everything's in line.
Yeah, just basically like what he was talking about, it would definitely help with like very big open world games, and I feel like that's just like a whole like weight off of the animators and like designers. It's crazy.
Yeah, and then you have all the other stuff like the interactive art exhibition and everything going into the AR where people are holding up the cameras, and you had the paper one to where it would crumple up and unfold, and then the one with the hat to where it formed wave images.
Yeah.
I really like that art exhibition.
Yeah, the only downside I could see is just like if someone doesn't have like a phone that's compatible with that, they won't be able to experience that type of like visuals that you would get from the AR thing.
Yeah, and that's one of the downsides with AR as a whole. There's a higher barrier to entry with things like that. And then, well, up next we have our next speaker. Who's our next speaker?
Our next speaker is Elliot Ridgway. Elliot Ridgway is an indie game developer based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and has released 3 games on Steam: Shapeshift Dawn, an episodic side-scroller with a 3D pre-rendered art; The Idiot's Tale, a 2D point-and-click adventure game; and Firefight, a retro arcade game.
We'll pass it over to Mr. Ridgway.
Am I live? Sound coming through? Okay, great. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Elliot Ridgway. Like they said just now, I'm an indie game developer based here locally in Tulsa. I've been doing this in my spare time for about the last 4 or 5 years. And GameMaker has been my primary game development tool that I've been using for that time. And so, I'm just going to be going over what GameMaker is, what it does, why you might want to consider using it for your project. And then we're going to go over a few demos here to actually show you the nitty-gritty of how GameMaker works. Oh, everything okay? Do you need me to pause or start over or anything like that? Okay. Okay, so I guess by show of hands, how many of you have heard of GameMaker or GameMaker Studio? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so most people have heard of it. I think it's gaining popularity. I think that for a long time, Unity and Unreal were kind of the 2 big heavy hitters for game development engines, but I think GameMaker is gaining popularity. Some of the reasons you might want to consider using it. So I think the biggest win for GameMaker is it's very quick to prototype your game idea in GameMaker. When I first started working on my indie RPG, which isn't out yet, but I'll be exhibiting it tomorrow, called MonCon. I started working on this about 5 years ago, and I had kind of narrowed my choices down to 2 possible game engines, either Unity or GameMaker. And the difference between the 2 was just night and day. I found Unity to just have a very steep learning curve, and it took me a long time to just get anything up and running. Whereas GameMaker, by contrast, everything just kind of clicked together really quickly for me. So I would say that if you have never developed games before, GameMaker is a great tool to use if you're a beginner. It's not hard to get started. There are lots of tutorials, lots of resources. The interface is really intuitive. But it's also very flexible in that it scales all the way up to doing extremely advanced games. And so I'll get into some of the advanced features a little bit later on in this slide. GameMaker exports to most things. So primarily it's a game development engine for computers. So you got Windows, Mac, and Linux. It can also export to the web, so you can have it playing in a web browser. You can export to mobile, so Android, iOS, that sort of thing. And also consoles. So there are some licensing restrictions around consoles, but it can export to everything: Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. If you're not a programmer, not to worry. GameMaker has got a way of putting game logic together, which they call drag and drop or D&D. It's kind of like Scratch. If you've ever used Scratch, it's just you're dragging blocks together to create the logic for your game. Alternately, if you are a programmer, GameMaker has its own programming language called GML, which is probably most similar to C or JavaScript or C++, one of those languages, but it's not hard to pick up. And to that end, I'm going to nerd out a little bit here because my background is computer science. GameMaker does have a lot of the nice features that you would expect from a modern programming language. So all of the data structures that you'd be familiar with as a programmer are represented. You've got arrays, lists, queues, maps, stacks. All of those are available for you to use. Object inheritance. So this is really useful for if you have a game where you want an object in your game to behave a certain way, but then you've got some other object that you want to behave similarly, but a little bit different. You can inherit most of the logic from that first object. And this is kind of a common feature of most programming languages, is object inheritance. Functions were added recently, and so this is really nice because you can encapsulate a little bit of game logic and put it in a place where it's shared amongst several objects and subroutines within your game. So you don't have to keep writing the same piece of code over and over. You can just put it in a function, store it off to the side, and then you've got it. You write it once, and then you never have to write it again. And then GameMaker also has got some game-friendly loop features. So there's a keyword in GameMaker called with that is kind of unique to GameMaker. I guess they've got with in Python, but it has a slightly different meaning in GameMaker. So with allows you to iterate over all of the objects in your game and do it very quickly. So there's some game-specific features of GML that are really nice. For animation, you've got a lot of different options at your disposal. So GameMaker supports traditional sprite animation. So this would be most common for like 2D pixel art games or something like that. You can do just traditional frame-by-frame animation. You can also do skeleton animation in GameMaker. So this would be more like if you remember old Flash cartoons, where everything was controlled by a skeleton, and the characters just kind of like moving around like this. You can do that in GameMaker as well. Curves were added recently, so if you want something to happen on a smooth animation curve with some handlebar, I'm not sure if you all are familiar with that, like in animation editors, you can do like a curve and you can control like where the curve goes with some handlebars. GameMaker can do that too. And it just kind of goes on and on. They're adding new features all the time. So you got particle systems, so you can do things like fire and rain and smoke and stuff like that. Layer effects was something they just added within the last couple of months. So you can have a layer in your game that you could apply, like say, an underwater effect to, and it's just like a one-button thing. And now you've got this like kind of ripply effect to show that you're underwater, something like that. Technically, it does support 3D as well, and I would say this is one of the limitations of GameMaker. So if you're interested in making a 3D game, I would maybe you should probably consider using a different engine, because what you're essentially doing in GameMaker is you're drawing surfaces onto vertexes one at a time. So while yes, it technically does support 3D, you're going to be doing everything by hand. And maybe that's what you want to do, but just be warned that it's not a fully fledged 3D engine. Unity or Unreal. Shaders are really useful, and if you've been in game programming or graphics, you're probably familiar with GLSL. This is essentially just code that runs on the graphics card of your computer, and it runs really fast. So you can do really complex graphics effects for little to no cost. Steam integration, that one's really useful too. So it's really easy to integrate your GameMaker games with Steam, so things like Steam achievements, cloud saves to the Steam cloud, controller support, that sort of thing. When you get stuck in GameMaker, GameMaker has got really great, first of all, documentation. So if you're coding along and you come to something that you don't really know how a function works, or you're not really sure what to do next, the manual is your best friend there. And the debugging tools are really nice and really sophisticated. So it's pretty similar to what you would experience in another integrated development tool like Eclipse or VS Code. Basically, you can go through your game logic and set breakpoints for where you think that the game might be misbehaving, and you can actually stop the game. You can inspect all the variables, and you can inspect the game state as you're testing your game out. So a lot of really nice features. And GameMaker is free. So I probably should have put a little asterisk next to that. It's free to get started in GameMaker, and you can use GameMaker itself as long as you want for free. If you want to start publishing your games, then that's where we get into licensing issues, which I'll go over on the next slide. By the way, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. If anyone has any questions, feel free to interrupt at any time. Just raise your hand or whatever, and I'm happy to stop and answer questions. So if there's any doubt left in your mind about the utility of GameMaker as a full-blown game engine, these are some examples of games that were done in GameMaker that are pretty well-known indie games. So I think that, first of all, I think this expresses the versatility of the kinds of games you can make with GameMaker, but also I don't think that you're limiting yourself at all if you want to choose GameMaker to develop your indie game. So I'm going to talk about the downsides of GameMaker here really quick, and then we're going to get into the demos. So like I said earlier, GameMaker is kind of limited on what it can do for 3D support. Basically, you're just going to be doing everything by hand. If that is not your bag, maybe you should consider using something like Unity or Unreal or Godot or something like that. The licensing can be expensive. So at the base, just to put your game on computers, it's not so bad. So it's $5 a month for a GameMaker license. To release on for the web or for mobile, that license is slightly more expensive. And then to do console releases, say Switch or Xbox or what have you, it's $80 a month. So it's a little bit price heavy if your goal is to put your game on the Switch or something like that. So you probably want to have some kind of revenue plan in place before you sign up for an $80 a month license for your games. Okay, cool. So if there are no questions right now, I'm just going to jump over into the demo for GameMaker here. All right, so this is GameMaker. Hopefully the font size will be okay for everybody. I don't know how to make the font bigger, but this is basically what GameMaker looks like when you first open it up. So I'm just going to go over the real estate on the screen here really quickly, and then we're going to get into the demo itself. So this big black area, it's actually dark green, but you can't really see it on this screen. The big black area is your workspace. And like the name implies, this is where you're going to be doing all your work in GameMaker. So sprite editing, writing scripts, importing music files, all of that is kind of done in the workspace and these little floating consoles that GameMaker creates for you to do work in sort of context-specific ways. Along the right side here, we have the asset browser, and this is where all of your game resources go. All of these folders are fully customizable. This is the default that's given to you when you create a new GameMaker project. So you have a folder for animation curves, fonts, objects, sprites, tile sets. So if you don't like that arrangement, you can make your own, which is nice. And then along the bottom here, we have this dock that has a couple of tabbed views. So what we're looking at here is the console. So if you've used a tool like Eclipse or Visual Studio before, you're probably familiar with the console. Most of the time, if your game is running great, you're not going to pay any attention to this. This is just kind of engine output while GameMaker is running. If your game crashes, this would be where the error message would go. So you can start there and then kind of work your way backwards to what went wrong. And then there's some other useful options up here in the top menus that I'll dive into a little bit in a second. So rather than starting completely from scratch and building up a game out of nothing, I thought that it would be more illustrative to start with a couple of started game projects and show you guys how we can add to those games. So I have it's a twofold demo. There's two different little miniature games we're going to be working with here. So this is the first one. This is like your classic arcade space. Whoops. This is like your classic arcade space shooter. Right now, nothing is going to happen if we just leave it sitting here. I've already coded up some logic. If I push the space bar, my ship will shoot a little pellet out of it that moves from left to right across the screen. And if that pellet contacts one of the bad guy ships, then it will disappear. So not a very interesting game at this point, but it's a start. And what we're going to be doing here is adding some neat effects to it to make it a little bit more interesting. And then the second of my two demos here today is more of a Mario side-scroller type of game. So here, all I've done is I've coded up the logic to have my Mario clone guy walk left and right on the screen, and I can also make him jump. So I can have him jump across this chasm. This level looks pretty boring right now. All we have are these white squares that are the collision tiles that he collides with. And so what this demo is going to illustrate is how to make this look a little bit nicer with tile sets. So yeah, let's circle back to the space shooter demo. So everything in GameMaker is stored in rooms. So you can sort of think of rooms as like the levels of your game, for example, or the different screens in your game. The language in GameMaker is these are called rooms, basically. So I've got this rooms folder here, and underneath the first item in the list is demo room 1, which is my space shooter. So I'm going to double click on that. And when I do that, that will open up the room editor for me. So here's the game that we were looking at earlier. This tile grid is given to you by default, but if it's not appropriate for your game, you can turn it off with this toggle grid button up here in the top right. So I can turn that off, and that looks a little bit nicer. The first thing to notice here is that everything that we're looking at on the screen is stacked in layers. So at minimum, you have to have one layer in your room, but it's typically good for organization's sake to organize your room into multiple layers that stack on top of each other. So for example, at the very bottom, we have this layer called background. And so that is this space background that I got off of Google. And just to illustrate that that is on its own layer, I can click on this eyeball icon here in the room editor list on the left, and I can turn it on and off. So we can see that that's my background layer. Next up, I have this layer called good guy. That's our blue ship. So I can turn that on and off and see that that's on its own layer. And then I've got bad guys. They're on their own layer. And then I've got this empty layer up here called effects. And so effects is where we are going to be putting the special effects that we're going to be designing here in a minute. So basically what we want to add to this is when the pellet comes out of the good guy ship and impacts one of the bad guy ships, we want an explosion to appear where the bad guy ship was. And then we want the explosion to get rid of itself after the animation has finished playing. So that's kind of an overview of where we're headed with this. Let's start working on that. Everything in GameMaker starts with sprites. So, and that kind of makes intuitive sense, right? Because everything in your game needs to be, for the most part, needs to be a visual element that appears on the screen. So that means that it's going to start with some kind of image file that you import, and those are stored in sprite objects. Here's all of my sprites here. So everything that we were looking at earlier in the room editor is stored here as sprites. One thing to note is that there is a distinction in GameMaker between sprites and objects. So I lied a little bit when I said that this room has all of our sprites in it. That's not technically true. So there's the sprites, which are just images that are imported into your game that make up how your game looks, but there's no logic attached to sprites. So if you want to add logic, say to have your ship move around on the screen or be able to shoot, then you need to create an object to go with that sprite. So what we're looking at in the room editor here are objects, not sprites, but we need to start out with sprites. So to import a new sprite into our game, I'm just going to right-click inside of my demo 1 folder here. By the way, you can organize these into subfolders as well, so you're not limited on how deep these can go. You can organize it however you want. But regardless, I'm going to right-click on this demo 1 folder, and then I'm going to go to this create menu, and then I'm going to come down to sprite, kind of towards the bottom of the list here. So I'm going to click on sprite. And so now that has opened up a new sprite editor in our workspace. So this is blank right now. And there's a couple of different ways you can get started at this point. So you could actually use GameMaker itself to draw your sprites. So GameMaker has its own paint editor with paintbrushes and erasers and stuff like that you could use to draw your own sprites. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's a pretty full-featured sprite editor. But a lot of times you're going to be working in another tool like say Photoshop or or AE sprite, I guess, if you're doing sprite art, and then you want to import it into your GameMaker game. So that's what we're going to be doing here. So I have previously got this explosion strip image off the internet. And what this is it's 6 images that make up our explosion. And so if you have an image that has the word strip in the name, GameMaker is actually intelligent enough to subdivide this into multiple frames of animation for your sprite. So we don't actually have to do the work of cutting out the first frame and then putting it in GameMaker, cut out the second frame, put it in GameMaker. GameMaker will do all of that for us. So you'll note up here at the top that this explosion sprite is suffixed with the word, it's underscore strip and then the number 6 to indicate that there are 6 images here. And so GameMaker knows to subdivide this into 6 segments. So that's a nice handy shortcut to keep in your back pocket. So I'm going to click import here in the sprite editor. And then I'm going to go over to my S-Explosion strip 6 image. And then I'm going to click open. And then GameMaker gives this warning about importing sprites as a non-undoable action. And then we can just say, yes, we want to continue because it's not really relevant here. So now I've got my explosion imported into GameMaker, and you'll notice that we can still see the strip along the bottom, but now it has kind of been subdivided into this animation strip according to GameMaker. You can see the little ticks along the top that show that we're in an animation strip, and there's a playhead on the left. So if I click on the play button here, we can see this animation playing. So we didn't have to do any work to get this up and running. All we had to do was have an image that was evenly divided into 6 segments, and GameMaker did all of this for us right off the bat. So I think this is playing a little bit fast, actually, so I'm going to slow this down to 15 frames per second. So that looks a little bit better. So there's an FPS field up here in the top left that allows you to control the frames per second rate of the animation. So that's good to know as well. We've also got this little crosshair up in the top left that represents the center of our object. Typically, it's good practice to move this crosshair down to like the center of your object, simply because if you were to apply, say, like a rotation effect or a scale effect to this, you would want the crosshair to actually represent the center of your object. You wouldn't want it to be off in the top left corner. There's also some nice shortcuts up here in the top right for where you can position that center cursor. So we can actually choose this option here, middle center, and that will align it exactly in the center of the sprite for us. So we don't have to really guess where the center is. GameMaker will do that for us. Okay, great. So I'll pause here, just take a drink of water. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, cool. So we have a sprite now. But as I said earlier, we can't put sprites into our room directly because there's no logic associated with the sprite. So what I'm going to have to do to get the explosion into my room is create an object to go with the explosion. So I'm going to come back over to my workspace. Oh, I forgot to name this. So I am going to name this lowercase s for sprite and then the word explosion. And so this is not really required. This is just kind of a nice GameMaker sort of, I don't know, agreed upon convention among GameMaker developers that for sprites, you want to prefix that with the lowercase s. If you are working with objects, you want to prefix that with the lowercase o. And this is just to kind of help you keep track of everything. As your game grows, your objects and sprites are going to look very similar because they use the same images to represent themselves. So lowercase o is for objects, lowercase s is for sprites. That's something you can do to kind of help you keep track of stuff if you want to. Great, so now we're going to create an object to go with the explosion, and this will be where all of our logic for the explosion goes. So I'm going to close this sprites folder and then open up objects, open up demo 1, and you can see we already have a few objects here. We've got the bad ship, we've got the hero ship, and then we've got the pellet that comes out of the hero ship that, and all of these are prefixed to the lowercase o, so we know that we're working with objects here. So I'm going to make a new object. I'm going to right click on my demo 1 folder, come back to this create menu, and then I'm going to find object in the list instead of sprite. And so the editor for an object looks significantly different than the editor for a sprite, just because objects are different beasts. First things first, I'm going to name this. So I'm going to call it lowercase o explosion, and then save that name. So the first thing you'll typically want to do when you have a new object is you'll want to assign your sprite to it. You can see this little area on the left here that says sprite at the top. This is where we set the sprite for the object. So right now it's set to no sprite. So if I put this object in my room, nothing would get drawn. So I'm going to click on this button here that says no sprite on it, and it'll give me this pop-up menu that allows me to browse through all of the sprites that are in my game and navigate to the explosion sprite that I want. So I put that in the demo1 folder. And here's my S explosion sprite, so I'm going to click on that. So now my O explosion object has the S explosion sprite associated with it. So there's a couple of other useful things that are good to point out here. So there's a shortcut back to the sprite editor. If you're working with an object and you just want to jump over to the sprite, you can click on this Edit Sprite button. You can set the collision mask for the object. So in games where you are working with collision logic, this would be where you would set that. You can tell a GameMaker if the object is visible or not. Persistent just means does the game remember the object as you go from room to room. So if you want something to stay in your game as you move to the next room, you don't want GameMaker to flush all the objects out. You can set it to persistent, and then the GameMaker will hold on to that object for you as long as the game is running. I'm going to get into events here in a second, but first I want to show everybody what happens if I just go ahead and put this object in my room. So I'm going to come back over to demo room 1 here. And I am going to put the O explosion object onto my effects layer. And so the way to do that is I have the effects layer selected over here in the left in the list of layers. And so to put a new object in the room, all you have to do is left click and hold over here in the asset browser, and then drag it over to your room, and then let go wherever you want the object to go. So I'm going to do that. So now you can see that there is an explosion object in my room. And then also we have this nice list on the left of everything that's on the layer, so we can see that there is indeed an O explosion object on my effects layer. So if I play this right now, we can see how the object is going to behave, and we'll see right away that this isn't quite what we want yet. So the object is going to just sit in the center of the room and just keep exploding. So that is kind of interesting, but not really what we're going for. What we actually want this to do is we want the explosion to only appear next to the red ships when a pellet impacts the red ships. And then we don't want the explosion animation to keep looping over and over. We actually want it to disappear as soon as the animation has finished playing. So for both of those tasks, we're going to get into some scripting logic for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. And now we're going to do a little bit of coding here. So I apologize if you don't have any programming background. I'll try to keep it and to explain everything that I'm doing as I go along. So everything in GameMaker is driven by events. Events are the kind of the sections of logic that make up an object. So just to illustrate this, I guess, if I click on this add for different events that I can assign to the object. So right up at the top, we have a create event. So if you wanted something to happen in the game when the object gets created, you would add a create event. So this is a good place to set up the variables that the object is going to require, maybe do some initialization logic, stuff like that. Destroy is kind of the corollary to create. So if you want something to happen when the object gets destroyed, you would put it in the destroy event. The step event is where you're going to be doing most of your logic in GameMaker. So step refers to every update of the game loop, a step event is going to occur. So the way video games generally work is that everything is run by a massive loop called the game loop. And so each time that loop updates, the game is refreshing what state everything is in. Did the player move? Did enemies die? Things like that. So GameMaker allows you to insert logic that happens on every single step by using this step event. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones here. For the purposes of our demo, I'm going to come down to this other menu, and then I'm going to come down to this option that's kind of tucked away here called animation end. So what animation end does is it pretty much does what the name implies. Something is going to happen when the animation completes. So we have our 6-frame animation here. And then when it gets to that 6th frame and then gets ready to loop back to the first one, it's going to fire off an animation end event. and say, hey, I'm ready to do something with this object. What do you want me to do? And so we're going to start putting our logic for what we want to have happen here in this code editor that's taking up the bulk of the right side of the workspace. So this is just a regular old code editor. So you can type in here. You have syntax highlighting and error markup and stuff like that. So GameMaker will tell you if you've typed something that it doesn't recognize. It'll put a little red line next to it to show you, hey, this is not going to compile. Like I mentioned earlier, we want the explosion to get rid of itself when the animation has finished playing. So GameMaker has this function that's provided for you. You don't have to. This just comes out of the box with GameMaker. It's a function called instance destroy. And so what instance destroy does is, as the name implies, it destroys something in your game. And so basically you tell GameMaker, I want to call instance destroy, and then we're going to tell GameMaker what it is that we want to destroy, which in this case is we want the explosion object to destroy itself. So we're going to type instance destroy. And so GameMaker recognizes that, and we know that because the text turned orange, which function names are orange in GameMaker. And so, but we still got red error markup on the left, which tells us that we're not done yet. We still need to provide what's called an argument to instance destroy. And so arguments simply refer to the elements that get passed into a function to tell the function what to do. And in almost all programming languages, this is designated by open and closed parentheses. So if you have a function that takes no arguments, it's just going to look like this to say my argument list is empty. But in the case of GameMaker, we want to, in the case of this function, we want to pass in a single argument that allows the object to refer to itself. So the conventional way to do that in GameMaker to have an object refer to itself is you type self.id. And there's a couple of different things that are colored differently. So red refers to sort of concrete concepts in GameMaker, I guess you'd say. So things like recognized keywords and stuff like that. And then green text indicates that it is a property of the object itself. So without getting too much further into the muck of programming here, basically what we've said to GameMaker here is, hey, I want you to destroy this explosion on the end of its animation. So we're able to achieve all of that with this one line of code here. So I'm going to come back into the room and put an explosion object back on the screen so we can see if our logic that we added worked or not. So what we'd expect to happen here is when I run the game, we should see the explosion animation play really quickly, and then as soon as the animation has finished, we want that explosion object to go away. So let's see if that's what happens. Cool, so yeah, that did exactly what we wanted. So the explosion played and then it disappeared. So great. This is still not quite what we want. We want the explosion to appear by the red ship at the moment that a pellet collides with it. And so the way that we do that is we're going to close out of our OExplosion object editor because we don't need it anymore. And instead I'm going to open up the object editor for OBadShip. And so this is an object that I created prior to this demo. We can see that it already has a create event, which just tells GameMaker to do stuff when the object gets created at the beginning of the room. And then we have a step event, which like I described earlier, this is something that is going to happen on every update of the game loop. So in this case, we've got some code already written here that is a little bit more advanced. I really apologize about the text size. I don't know if I can make that any bigger. Is that better for everybody? Easier to read? So, okay, cool. This is a pretty simple bit of logic, but I'll still go through everything for if anyone is not a programmer here. We're starting this off with an if statement, and so basically what you're telling GameMaker to do is to employ conditional logic. So you're saying if the following statement is true, then I want you to do whatever is contained inside of the curly brackets. If the statement is false, then don't do what's inside the curly brackets and just proceed. So in this case, our statement that needs to be evaluated whether it's true or not is we want to see if anything is colliding with the bad guy ship. So In this case, we're asking GameMaker to check if anything, if an O hero shot object, so that's the white pellets going across the screen, if those are colliding with this ship, then the statement evaluates to true. And so the way that's achieved is with yet another built-in GameMaker function called place meeting. Place meeting is just asking GameMaker, is anything touching the object that you have provided in the argument list? The other thing you'll notice here is that the argument list is a little bit longer. This function takes 3 arguments instead of 1. So we're giving it the X position of the bad ship, the Y position of the bad ship. So X is horizontal on the screen and Y is vertical on the screen. So we're telling it where the ship is located, basically, and we're asking it, are any of these colliding with the ship? So if that statement evaluates to true, we've got another instance destroy self.id line of code here. And so this should be kind of evident what is going on here, because this is the same thing that our explosion object is doing. So what we want to do here is we want to create a new explosion object at the moment that the shot collides with the bad guy ship. So what we're going to do is write a new, or rather employ an existing GameMaker function, but we're going to write a new line of code for this. This is similar to instance destroy, but this one is called instance create layer. And you'll notice something happened as I started typing this. GameMaker popped up this, this drop-down menu that shows all of the different functions that are provided to you by default in GameMaker. So you can see there's a lot of functions that start with instance underscore. So if you kind of have a guess about what your function is called, but you don't remember exactly, you can just navigate down this list until you find it, and then choose the right one. I'm just going to zoom out here for a second to show something. So another nice thing that GameMaker does is, as you are working in code, if you're working with a function and you don't remember the argument list, there's this hint text at the bottom here that will show you how many arguments you need. And as you type, it'll highlight each of those arguments to show you how far along in the list you are. So I've put my cursor at the point where I would put the first argument in, and you can kind of see that everything else in the list dithered out. And so as I continue to type, it'll highlight those and show me, okay, now you're on the second argument, now you're on the third argument. So that's yet another nice visual hint that the GameMaker gives you. So there's 4 arguments for instance create layer. We are going to provide it with the X coordinate and the Y coordinate of where we want the explosion to appear. So again, that's where it is horizontally on the screen and where it is vertically on the screen. We're going to provide it with the layer that we want to put the object on. So that's our effects layer that we kind of set aside in advance. And then finally, we are going to give it the object type that we want to create. So layer comes first. So I'm going to type effects. And so this is yet another color that GameMaker will give you in the code editor. So yellow refers to text strings. So that's just something else to keep in mind. And so then I'm going to provide it with O explosion. And then that rounds out our function call here. So what we would expect to happen is when a shot collides with the bad ship, it's going to create an explosion at the point where the ship resides, because X and Y refer to the object that we're in, and we're in the O bad ship object. It's going to create that explosion, and then the explosion is going to destroy itself when it's done animating, according to what we wrote earlier. So let's see if this plays out. Okay, so now I'm going to hit the spacebar, shoot a pellet. Cool. So now we have an explosion animation that shows up right when the pellet collides with the ship. The ship goes away, and so does the explosion. So I think this looks a lot better than what we had before. So that's the end of our first demo here. Are there any questions about any of this? Yes?
So if you go back to the explosion and select it,
Yeah.
you explained steps as just the update, so whenever frame is going to update and check this. So why does it wait in an animation? You don't have logic for this.
Yeah, so I think the question, just to make sure I understand it, you're asking why does this event that I've coded not happen on every update loop of the game? Why does it wait for the end of the animation? So the event that has to do with update loops is called step. This is the only one that applies to the update loop of the game. So every other type of event that you can assign to an object in GameMaker is triggered by other things happening apart from the game loop. So animation end actually doesn't have anything to do with the update loop. It's just the step event that is tied to the update loop of your game. But yeah, that was a good question. Yes?
How many sprites are you allowed to have on screens? I know like on phone you have draw call.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found like
A limit? Yeah. Well, so I know there are theoretical limits. There is a debugger in GameMaker that will show you how much memory you're using at any given time, and it's divided up into there's the amount of has to run and keep the frame rate up to keep it running, 60 frames per second or whatever. And then if you go beyond that line, then you're going to start losing frames. And then the bar that is showing you how much memory you're using, I think it turns to yellow. And then if you go beyond the yellow section, then that means you've run out of memory. So it's not really that there is a set number of how many sprites you can have on the screen. It's more, it just kind of depends on how you're managing your memory and how much you're doing on every step of the game. Actually, recently, GameMaker did add some sprite compression to their feature set. So you have different options for how you want to compress your images when you ship the game out. And there are obviously trade-offs for that, for loading time versus in-memory space. So cool. Any other questions? How am I doing on time?
it's 1:38?
Do I have to be done 15 till? Or? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll.
Someone wrote, you can actually just say instance underscore destroy itself to destroy object. No need for the ID instance destroy on its own. Also will destroy the object.
Okay. Cool. I don't know if they changed that back. Recently, GameMaker changed how self is referred to. So if you had instance destroy self without the .id at the end, it wouldn't work. You'd get into an ambiguous state where it wasn't really sure which object to destroy in some rare situations. So at least last I looked into it, self.id is like extra insurance to make sure that you get the right object when you tell it to instance destroy. But I actually, that was something that changed a few years ago, and so I haven't looked into if they've switched it back so you can just simply refer to instance destroy self. So cool. Yeah, great questions, everybody. Okay, so I've got about 5 minutes left here, so I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. We're going to take a look at the second demo room and look at our Mario game. And I'm just going to give everybody a quick overview of how you import tiles into your game and how you might want to decorate your room with tiles. So we've got this grid here in the background already set up for us. And so everything is divided up into 32 by 32 squares. The basic way that a game like Mario, for example, is drawn is that everything is made up of little sub-images called tiles. And those are repeated across the screen, and this is a great way to save on memory as your game is running. So you don't have to draw a unique sprite for every single brick, every single piece of grass. You can actually take a common image of a brick or a common image of grass, and then just duplicate it however you want along your room. So I've previously created this tile set. So this is kind of a collage of different tiles that we could use in our game. These are all, I believe they're 64 by 64 squares. So you can see, like, starting up in the top left and moving along to the right, you can see I've got like an X brick, some grass, some dirt, a happy tree. These are all sub-images that we can import into GameMaker, and then we can take out the individual squares and start to draw out the background of our room. So like with everything in GameMaker, this starts with sprites. So I'm going to create a sprite for my tile set, create sprite, and then I'm going to import that image that we were looking at earlier. So now I've got that in my game as a sprite. Now the problem is I can't do anything with it, right? GameMaker is just looking at this as a single large image. It doesn't understand that we need to subdivide this. So what I'm going to do instead, or rather not instead, what I'm going to do next is after importing the sprite, I'm going to create a tile set to go with the sprite. So this is kind of similar to how we made sprites and then objects in the first demo. Now we're going from sprites to tile sets. So in the tile sets folder, I'm going to go to create and then go to tile set. And so this is yet another type of editor. This is specifically for tiles. So I'm going to assign a sprite to my tile set. So this is kind of the same process as we did with objects. So I'm going to come into the sprites folder, demo2, and then I'm going to import my tile set sprite that I imported previously. And so right off the bat, you'll notice that that it put this grid on top of our image, and the divisions are actually finer than we need them to be. By default, it'll give you 16 by 16 tiles, and this is too much for us. So I'm just going to change this in the tile width and the tile height fields here on the right to from 16 to 64 in both cases. And so you can see now the grid aligns perfectly with the images that we have in our tile set. Cool, so now we've got a tile set here, and so now the last step is to start putting this into our room. So typically you're going to put tiles on their own layer, so we need to create a new layer for this. And actually tiles are a special case, so they get their own unique type of layer where you're not allowed to put objects, but you are allowed to draw tiles. So that's designated by this Create New Tile Layer button here. It looks kind of like a sideways square. So I'm going to click on that. Now I've got a new tile layer, and I need to assign a tile set to it. So this would be where we assign the tile set that we just created, not the sprite, but the tile set. Click on that. And so now it's opening up this new side editor for adding, this allows us to actually add the tiles to our room. And so this is where you can start to have some fun with tiles. This is where you can be a little bit more creative. So I've selected this X brick here on in the second from the left at the top, and then I'm just going to move my mouse out here, and we can see that there's this X brick that's following my mouse around. And so as soon as I left click and hold and start dragging on the screen, I can start drawing tiles for my game. And like I said, this is where you can kind of get creative with it. You can just kind of use your eye and see like what looks good. Like maybe we need a few blades of grass here. You know, maybe there's some more over here. You know, we need some dirt down here, for example. It's kind of just up to you how you want this to look. Yeah, so that is kind of a crash course on tiles. Sorry I ran through that kind of quickly. I kind of fell behind there. So are there any questions here in the last 15 minutes of the demo? Or is there anything else you're curious about? Can GameMaker do X, for example? Yes? If he falls in the gap, so I previously put in some gravity logic into this game. So when he's not colliding with a collision tile, which is those white squares that are now hidden behind our nice tile set. Whoops. He's programmed to respond to gravity. So as soon as he steps off this ledge, he's going to fall off the screen. And you'll notice that nothing happened after he fell off the screen here. This would be an area where you need to implement some more logic to tell the game what to do when he falls off the screen. Yes?
Can you get tiles with like auto collisions, where if you place like this block tile without a collision, and then you place the tree and it won't?
Not to my knowledge. There might be a way to do that in more modern versions of GameMaker. The way I was taught to do it is you have your tiles set up as the art in your game, but then your collision blocks, which you can sort of think of as your 2D geometry, that would go behind the nice looking tiles. So they're there and you can collide with them, but they don't actually correspond to the tiles themselves. Do you want me to keep going, or any more questions? Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
I really like GameMaker. It's a really great way to get an intro into especially 2D animation, and plus it has enough features to actually be able to build full-fleshed games, full games that have logic that are playable for experienced programmers.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that like it had an option just for like something that if you're not an experienced programmer, you could like just still be able to make a game without like any knowledge of coding, which for a person who's like more into like the more artistic route, it would be so much helpful for them to just work with this instead. So then they could like make a game, but not have to like deal with the struggle of like a learning curve.
Yeah, and the tile system is easy to walk into. It's easy to understand. So somebody can get started building a game right away, rather than having to go look at, say, Unity or Unreal, trying to learn an entire game engine. It simplifies that down to make that process easier, to where rather than worrying about all of the computer junk, somebody can go in and worry about making their game.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what most game developers and game designers want to do. They want to focus on their art.
Yeah, I feel like if someone like probably like a student would want to work with a game engine, they would most likely want to follow to the game maker, because it's like a great learning experience to like at least start off with something, and then if they want to go into like Unity or maybe Unreal, then they would have at least some experience from game maker.
I agree. Well, let's take a look at our sponsors.
CSG conference.
Now, our next presenter is going to present over level design. And level design is one of those things that you really want to guide your player on, and everything that they look on, you want your player to have a fun experience. So I'm really excited to hear about this next presentation.
And his name is Brandon Reed. He is a 3D artist and game dev who works with the Cherokee Nation, creating environments for various virtual projects. And through that, he's been a great deal with environmental composition and how to make players' reviews do exactly what you want them to do.
And with that, let's go over to Brandon Reed.
All right. So as you guys said, my name is Brandon Reed. Before we get started, how many of you guys have actually worked in game design and made a game published? All right, so most of you actually. All right. Have any of you made a 3D game? All right, about the same amount. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about basically how you can use level design to control and kind of coerce players into doing things that you want to. First, a little bit about me. As you guys said, I'm a technical artist over at the Cherokee Nation, which basically means that I make environments and shaders, props, and for pretty much everything that they want to throw at me is what I end up doing. Apart from that, I also really enjoy doing game development. I've made around 8 games, most of the work stuff that I do is in Unreal Engine. But apart from that, I mainly use things like Pico 8 and Unity for more hobby stuff. And here's a list of the games that I've made so far. Most of these are just like game jam games. The top 2 are the Pico 8 games that I've made. And then the rest are in either Unity or one that I did with one of my friends. This one right here was done in Game Maker. And then, so yeah, let's just get into it. There are a few ways to guide a player. I'm going to first talk about ones that I think are good and then ones that I don't think are good. So good ones are through like graphic design. So framing a composition around where you want the player's eyes to be guided towards. And then using things like mechanics like coins, chests, doors. Basically, whenever you see like a chest or a door in a game, players are usually apt to move towards it. And then ones that are less good, not ones that I really enjoy, like the Skyrim waypoint that just kind of pops up at the top of the screen. It's not bad, it works, it does exactly what it's meant to do, and I mean, it's efficient. The player sees it, they know where to go, and you can throw it on 1,000 different quests with the click of a button. But there's more that you can do. It's not the best solution. One that is less excusable than that is just drawing an arrow towards the quest point that you're supposed to go to. That happens in a lot of MMOs like Black Desert or actually Toontown was the one that I first thought about whenever I was thinking about this. Yeah, please don't do that one. That one hurts. But yeah, if we're going into the good ways, these can be further split up into graphic design and mechanics. I'm going to go over each of those. So leading with graphic design is a very big one. You can use things like lines, contrast, gradients, lights, motion, and framing. Lines, I basically mean having different lines in the environment, like trims and things like that, that converge onto a point. Then contrast, the thing that is the highest contrast in the image is usually the point of focus. Gradients, kind of blending towards the point of focus. And then light, it's kind of obvious. The thing is in light. And then motion, having something moving towards your point of focus. And framing, which is a little bit different than all the other ones, but it's a way to get your player to look where you want them to. So if you have some object over here and your player is looking the other way, they're not going to see all the things that point at it. So you need to get them to, what I would normally do is something like a tunnel, where the player can walk through this tunnel and they're not going to walk through it backwards. So you know that they're going to turn and they're going to see this thing through the opening of the tunnel. And then leading with mechanics, we have, there's a few ways. As I said before, we have objects of interest, things like coins, chests, collectibles, and like doors, basically things that a player would see and want to go towards. And these don't have to be something that's like super incredibly interesting. It doesn't all have to be like this magnificent spectacle that you want to go look at. It just has to be enough to get the player to choose one direction over another. And then objects of disinterest, which are kind of things that repel the player instead of attracting them. So like enemies. We've got enemies, obstacles, kind of obvious. You're not going to jump onto a spike. And then empty space, which is one of my favorite ones. Basically, if you have a player that is going in one direction and there's an object of interest, everything around them, if there's nothing there, then they're not going to go off into this void, usually. Some players do. So yeah, I'm going to get into a few examples really quickly. This one is from a game called Journey. It was a collaboration between that game company and Santa Monica Studios. So this one uses framing in an interesting way, as it is the first thing that you see whenever the game opens, pretty much. So it pretty much forces the camera up at this, at these little spires right here, as well as those being pretty much the only thing in the scene, and everything else is just empty. You can turn around and walk the other way if you really want to, but there's not much reason for it. Yeah? Yeah, that's true, actually. There are a lot of games where players are attracted towards enemies, where they want to like get power-ups from them. They want to get drops, items, and things like that. That's a good point, yeah.
So that makes this kind of like a niche, like, or very narrow, like, bullseye, really. Because in some cases, like, obviously you may, if you beat the game without fighting enemies, you could play that way. But other games, you have to fight enemies well enough to actually beat the boss at the end or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I suppose this is kind of based on your game style, game mechanics.
And these don't have to be very specific pinpoints. They don't have to be like, I want the player to turn left and right and then walk forward for 30 feet and then turn around and go the other way. It can just be like suggestions. Like there's a game, I'm sure you guys have heard of it, called Breath of the Wild. The place that the vast majority of players go to first without realizing it is, I forget what the place is called. It's the Zora area where all the fish in the water is. Most of the players go there first through just a series of really subtle directions from Nintendo telling the player, like, hey, here's a thing that's interesting, here's another thing. It's just this constant chain of things that guides the player towards Zora's domain. And then back in here, we've got another example from Journey again. A few of the things that guide you towards this, obviously the point of interest is this door here. You've got this gradient coming outwards that kind of converges on the door. And then you've got this great example of lines. These trims right here all converging onto this point as well as here and all of these. Almost every line in this scene converges on that point. And then we've got another example from a game called Abzu. This was from Giant Squid Productions. Both Journey and Abzu they're very linear games, but they were very much focused on guiding the player as specifically as they could. Not every game is going to be as direct as these, but these are very good examples for what I want to talk about. So with this one, I don't have the video of it, but right before you get to this point, there's a shark that comes up from this ridge right here. It will come up, and it will swim away through this hole, right through this little hole right here. And that brings your eye into here. And then the shark will swim back up here to this very out of place looking mechanical triangle. And players see that and they're like, okay, what is that? I want to know more immediately. So they'll swim basically sometimes without thinking. Some people will end up just going straight down instead, right to the bottom of the ocean, and there's some secrets in there. But eventually they do end up coming up to see this triangle, to see what's going on here, because it's very out of place. But there's plenty of things in this scene that are guiding your eye towards that triangle, the main one being the motion of the shark. But there's also this gradient going in towards that triangle, and then there's those red lights on the triangle, which that is the first time in the entire game that you've seen the color red. So that catches your eye pretty quickly. And then this is the map from a game called A Short Hike. This is a bit of a different example, but the starting point of this game is right around here. And the game tries to guide you into this main area around here, right? Many players do end up going that way. I did on my first playthrough. That's the first way that I went. But a lot of players don't. You can't always get them to do what you want to. A lot of the players just plunged directly into the ocean, went to these islands. You can't really control that, but the developer, he put things out there for the player to find, things that would be interesting and end up helping them later. A lot of players didn't stop there, though. They went all the way around to the back of the island to this cave right here. And this cave was kind of, he used it as a point of interest because there's not really anything behind the island. So he put this here as a way to say to players, hey, here's something, come look at it, might be interesting. And then it plops them right back at the start, right into the area that he wants them to be at. And then another example that I really like is making the player remember a certain point so that they might want to come back to it later. A great example is in a game called Hollow Knight, where you find these ledges that you just can't quite make it up to. And it's so frustrating. You're sitting there for me, it was like 15 minutes trying to get up to this ledge, and I just couldn't get it. So I carried on, and I went on about my business until I found an item called the Mantis Claw that lets you grab onto walls and jump off of walls. And then I could finally get up there, and it kind of clicked in my head like, oh, that's what they wanted me to do. They didn't want me to bang my head against the wall for 15 minutes. So I was able to get up there after that being drilled into my head that I was not ready for that yet. And then we've got another example of making the player remember a certain area from, if it loads, there we go, from a game called Subnautica. This is the point in the game where you find what's called the continental shelf, where the ocean floor just kind of drops out below you, and you just can't see the ground. Yeah. Oh, there is audio. Okay, well, so you go out to this point and you see the ground just drop below you, and your submarine, it can't go that deep. You're not able to explore what's down there, and you can't see the floor. And then you look up and you can't see the top of the water either. So you see that and you're just like, okay, I'm good. I'm not gonna do any of that. You turn around, you leave, and then you get some upgrades to your submarine. It's like, hey, you can go deeper now. And some players are very reluctant to go deeper. I definitely was. But in the end, you do end up going deeper if you choose to. And that progresses the game. And yeah, it's just a very interesting example of using different mechanics to guide a player into a certain point. And the next one, bonus round, is from a game called Elden Ring. I don't know if you can see that very well. So there are a few things on this screen that are kind of guiding your eye. I don't know if I can see that very well. Is that dim for everyone else? But, okay, yeah, they get to see. So there's a few things that are guiding the player in towards this. You've got this vignette that kind of closes in on this tree and these stairs on the left, these stairs leading up towards the exit of this area. And you've also got these little statues going up the side of the stair. And then you've got this golden tree kind of curling in and pointing towards that exit. And if you go through that door, that continues on with the game and you progress. However, if you go down this way into this deep dark hole, you get to go to the combat tutorial. So several players just totally missed that. They didn't get to learn how to fight, which is just classic From Software Dark Souls style. And yeah. So wrapping up, you want to lead players roughly with these attractive and repellent objects, things like graphic design elements, composition, and these repellent objects such as spikes and things that the player typically avoids. And then you want framing, basically finding a way to get that shot, get the player to see what you want them to see. And don't be like MMOs. Don't just draw a line to the point, to the objective. You can, but please don't. And then, honestly, if you take nothing else from this presentation, then I would say you want to manage the interest of a player. You want to find out what a player wants to go towards and what they don't. This can be thousands and thousands of things. I barely scratched the surface of things that can be interesting to a player. But yeah, I think it's going to open up for Q&A. Yeah. How do you prevent like people going onto guides and stuff like that?
Well, not necessarily guides, no. Prevent people from not following the paths you laid out. Maybe like a very interesting story path where you put a lot of work in, and just like, maybe like talking on the line, because maybe you wanted to tell people the item later, and on the island they learned to fly, and then you cross the path.
Right. Okay, so how many of you guys have played D&D before? So how many of you have been a DM and tried to structure a story that you want your player to go from point A to point B, and the players never do it? That's kind of the same with game development. It's a little bit more restrictive, but in the end, if you plan out a very specific path, your players are going to get disinterested. So you want to basically find a way to nudge them towards this, and be okay with them missing things. It's very often that someone's just not going to see something. If it's important, you should put it right in the start so that they can see it. Well, not necessarily in the start, but in a place where someone will see it. But I think it's very important to be okay with players missing things.
It's not a question, but you're getting a lot of love in the chat.
Oh. Oh, wow.
And then some other examples that were brought up
Naughty Dog games.
Last of Us.
Okay.
That they were saying that was one of their favorite.
So like just highlighting important objects?
Yeah, it'll do that in game.
Yeah.
And then Sakurai, is that how you say that name? It dies twice.
Sakurai? Or, oh, Sekiro.
Sekiro dies twice. That one, I've never said that loud. Uses natural pathways to help players know the direction, and while it seems it would be obvious railroading, it fits so naturally in the environment that the player doesn't realize.
Yeah, so there's actually, if I go back a little bit, over to right here, we've got, in this game right here, a short hike. The developer, Adam, placed a bunch of these coins along the ground, and it's literally just a breadcrumb trail of coins, along with these paths and fences. So the player would see that and choose to go one way over the other. And yeah, as I said before, it's very important to realize that not all of these objects of interest have to be like super magnificent, super interesting objects. It can just be like a coin on the ground that a player's like, ooh, okay, and take that. Yeah, just enough for them to choose one direction over the other. Yeah.
So for open world games where the players is free to go in any direction that they want,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like there's a sweet spot for how much to show the player all at once before they become overwhelmed?
So I think there's, I don't think you want to show them everything at first, just because if you've ever played a game like Civilization, where there's like, they give you 30 minutes of tutorials before you start the game. Some players are into that, some players like it. I don't. I end up dropping the game halfway through the tutorial. But there's definitely merit in guiding a player to specific waypoints. Like in Breath of the Wild, for example, it eventually guides you to Zora's Domain, but before that, I think it guides you to the scientist's house that I forgot her name. It ends up guiding you there beforehand through these different quest markers. And these quests are a very concrete way of getting a player to go from one point to another eventually, whereas they don't have to do it immediately. So I think just not having a direct path from one point to another where they can't veer off of it at all is kind of boring. Games like Journey and Abzu definitely do it well, but yeah, just kind of nudging the player towards a certain goal. A dark room, I'm not sure.
And then someone asked, what is your opinion on the design of Genshin Impact? And someone said, oh my god,
On the design of Genshin Impact?
yes, I don't know. It's like,
So it has its good moments. I played it a little bit. I never really got very far in it. But there's plenty of things that Genshin does very well. It's very similar to Breath of the Wild in the sense that you can really just kind of go wherever you want and still feel like you're making progress without necessarily progressing in the story. But in terms of level design, it doesn't nudge you any specific way without using quest points and markers. So in that sense, I think it lacks a little bit, but apart from that, I think it's a very solid game.
my question, how did you come up with the idea of the Tiptoe Dungeon? I love playing it and the
Okay. Tiptoe Dungeon was the first game that I made on my own. I think these are some of my friends that are just commenting on here. But Tiptoe Dungeon, that was the first game that I ever made. It was for a game jam that I ended up joining like 6 days late. I ended up finishing it though. And I think the theme was like limited supply or limited fuel or something. And my idea was like trying to navigate a maze with a limited amount of light, where you can turn your light on and this meter will go down. And it was a very small, very simple idea, But it ended up working pretty well, I think. Yeah.
Can you talk just a bit about
Well, most games do want to tell some sort of story, and if the player is just going all over the place, not really going where you want them to, then they might get confused on what the story is trying to be. I think it's less important in games like Hollow Knight, where the story is it takes a very background role, where all of the story that you find is through these like signpostings and stuff like that. But I think the big drive for that is going to be just getting them to understand the story that you're trying to push to them. I think they did exactly what they wanted to. Dark Souls games, or Souls games in general, are just they're very suited to challenging the player, even in some very cheap ways. I think it definitely does what they intended to, getting some players to just totally miss the combat tutorial. You can always go back to that point. You're able to just walk back down there and find it. I don't assume many players would, but I think they did what they wanted to. I'm not sure I agree with it though.
Sort of a follow-up question to that. Uncle John asked, with the recent success of Elden Ring in terms of how the world is presented and the lack of information given to the players, do you think the industry will follow this new way of level design?
I think it very well might. Elden Ring was hugely successful. So I think there's going to be plenty of companies that are trying to imitate the success that they had. I don't think it was anything specific that Elden Ring did that made it as popular as it was. They definitely improved on their previous games. It is, in my opinion, the best so far of the Souls games. But in general, I think the reason it was as popular as it was just because of the social media outcry for it. Just tons of people had seen this game, they wanted to talk about it, and plenty of people talked about it. And it just got people to buy it. Have any questions over here?
Well, thank you, Brandon. Thank you for giving a good talk. Talking about level design is always something interesting. Anytime we talk about guiding a player, there's so much that you have to account for. You have to account for what are players interested in, what do they want to see, what is your game story, where are you trying to lead them. So I think designing something like that is difficult, but if you do it well, it's really going to bring your game up to another level.
Yeah, I also remembered that, I know that in Fortnite, they had this moment where they collaborated with, I think it's called, I can't remember its name, but it has Tom Holland in it, not Spider-Man.
Uncharted.
Yeah, Uncharted. And, they had a map, and the map, the waypoint for it, it kind of had, a thing where it would blip on the ground, and it would lead the player to the chest that the map would show. Would that be considered a good way to lead the player to the destination?
I never played through it, so I wouldn't think of too much. But was it just a lot, an arrow pointing towards just an
Item of interest for the players, or was it guiding them towards was it guiding everyone at the same point?
It would only guide the player who held the map, but it never really guided anyone else who was in the player's team if they were in duos or squads.
Okay. I think that's less about level design and more game design in general. I think that's definitely interesting. I think that's cool. It kind of pushes teams toward. Are all of the teams being guided towards the same point?
Only the ones that have the map.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Is it if a player dies, do they drop that map and?
Okay, yeah, that's
So that's where I think that different types of games get situated with different scenarios call for different things. Some of them might have that style. Some might be more subtle with it, to where they're kind of playing off the environment more and trying to gently guide the player there. And other times there might be a different scenario that we're not even thinking of.
Yeah, like whenever you mentioned about the environment, I'm probably like imagining like maybe having a trail go through like these two like mountains, so then like the player can't really go this way or that way, they have to go through the trail in order to progress through the story.
Yeah, I think level design just for guiding a player is overall very interesting. So we'll take this time to go and look at our sponsors. back to the Computer Simulation and Gaming Conference. Here we're looking at the website. This is the CSGC website. So here we have the itch.io page. If you scroll down all the way to the bottom, you can see all of the 2022 submissions that are here for this year's conference. What do you think looks good for us to take a look at?
Not gonna lie, I kind of want to beat Prop Swap because I struggled last time.
All right, let's take a look at some prop swap again.
Yeah, I want to try and get over it. It's just like, I kept on just dying to either the spikes or the little chainsaw thingies. I don't, what are they even called? Like,
The little saws?
yeah, the little saws. Hold on, can I continue? That's not where I was. That's harder. Wait, I want to go back. Alright.
Let's also turn on.
You got me at the game. Look at me.
Sorry.
There you go.
All right.
Okay. Oh wait.
You gotta swap the objects, right?
Yeah. If I don't die. Got you. Okay. Never mind. There we go. And then. No wait. Come back. Oh. Okay. And then. Oh, I guess.
Try just pushing it in.
No, I can't push it in.
Can you push it all? Oh, because then there's a dude.
Okay. Oh, I just shot myself. Okay, never mind. Okay, what if? Oh wait, I think I have to push the spikes. No. Wait.
Let's see what's up at higher in the level. What all's up there?
Okay. Alright.
Can you shoot your deal on that brown thing on the left?
The dirt?
Yeah, the dirt. Would your can you pull it?
Let me see. No, I
Nope.
can't. That's okay. So I have to go this way.
Oh yeah, there's the button over there.
Okay. I'm gonna see if I can scoot it right there. Never mind. Alrighty. No. I'm stuck. I don't even know how that happened. Okay. You know what? Okay. Will it? Oh my god, how do I do that?
Just keep going straight and pray.
Wait. No, wait. Shoot. Oh my god, let's go! Alright, you know what? We have something though. Okay. Dang it, okay. No. Alright.
There you go.
No, I gotta get up. Oh. No. Okay. Dang it. I'm just gonna stay right here. Okay, let's go. Sweet. Okay. I hate these things. Wait, how do I get over there?
Can you jump? Can you swing over it?
I don't think so. Never mind, I'm stuck. Wait, okay. So I have to get up here. Or maybe this is just a misleader.
There you go. Ah.
You jinxed me. You're gonna try next.
All right.
Okay. Wait, how do I?
Can you crouch with down? Or down or maybe C or control?
I don't. Wait, scroll down. There's controllers. Climb.
There is no crouch.
There's no crouch? Then what's the point of me doing this?
I don't know.
Okay. I did.
Yeah, you just.
Okay, so we can't go up. We have to go here. Alright. You try. I'm done.
I want to try this game over here, Marble Knockout.
Oh, okay.
I took a look at it. I want to see what it is.
Alright.
Okay, so you got an arcade game. Let's see what happens.
You have to
It looks like you're gonna have to do that.
Yeah, maybe install it.
No, we'll take a look at. We'll take a look at some of the other games. Let's go get Curious Quest. We can.
Little thing. So tiny. Could you make it bigger?
Yeah, I can make it bigger.
Lies.
I cannot make it bigger.
Alright.
But I can start a new game. Right.
Okay. Oh.
I like the art of this game.
Yeah.
In the paws of a simple vagabond. Cookery.
That's adorable.
Oh, look. I really like the art of this game. This is,
Oh, eek. Oh, is she a frog now? Or are they a frog?
yeah, they became a frog.
Oh,
Here
this
we go.
is
Okay, what can I do? Okay, so I gotta keep going.
Yeah.
What are my controls? Is the X to use item? Maybe I just need to avoid them.
Yeah.
Oh no, I can attack them, and they can attack me.
Okay.
Let's go this way.
Oh, you have hearts.
And I am very quickly losing them.
Yeah. Oh, oh. They're like you thought.
They really got me on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna avoid them because I am already at 2 hearts. Actually, I'm gonna go further into the forest.
Okay.
Let's take a look. What's this say?
Oh, a hobbit village.
You wanna go to the village?
Yeah.
Let's go. Oh, we got people and a sign.
Okay. Could you interact?
Try.
Okay, so that's mean. All right.
Oh, but they're frogs. I wonder if is this is.
Okay. 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 Oh, thank you.
Where did I what?
What is this? Wait, the frog's a boss?
Oh no. I want to go. Oh, okay, I got 4.
Yeah, you
Okay,
got back.
so maybe I can fight it. Maybe.
Try it.
I'm very scared too.
Is it not a boss?
I don't know. I'm just gonna keep hitting it.
It's not attacking you.
Yeah, it's not attacking me, so I can probably just leave.
Okay. So it's just a scary looking thing.
Maybe.
Oh, me too. Yeah. I guess.
Is this? Oh, what's this?
Oh, they're in a relationship problem.
Oh. Yeah, I get. Oh, did.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Are you?
I'm going to go. Let's just go here. Oh,
Okay.
here's a shop.
Ooh.
What do we got?
Oh, this is adorable.
A bit risky to be
Do we have to pay for it?
in. Oh, I got.
Use B button to attack. Okay.
What's the equivalent of the B button? X. Yeah. Okay, let's. I want to go fight something.
It just not dawned on me that this is supposed to replicate a Game Boy.
I want to go fight something. I want to fight something.
Well, who are you gonna fight?
I don't know. I'm gonna see if I can find anything.
Okay.
Oh,
I think that you can't go.
I cannot go that
You gotta
way.
go the other way.
Maybe I can go back to the.
Oh, fight these.
That's a lot bigger.
Yeah, but you also got hit.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. Oh, you got hit again.
Where?
They hit you back.
Oh.
Just get good.
I'll be more careful next time.
Yeah.
If I have to be. Oh.
You gotta hit him. Or not. Oh, are you going back?
I think I have to go keep going forward. You want to keep going?
No, I'm interested in watching. Oh, there's an inn?
Let's look at the end.
I don't think they're open.
Nope, I can't go into the end.
Go into
They're
that
going
right
to here.
now. Oh, you can
I
go
can't
into
go in
it
here.
right now. Yeah, I get that.
That is very true.
Yeah. Could you like talk to the others?
Yeah, I can talk to people. Let's see what this guy has to say.
We already talked to them though.
Those frogs are fakes.
Yeah, we already did talk to this person. Oh,
Everyone want. Well, I really like this game. I like how this game has all the art that is in this game. And I've really enjoyed just walking around in this, just seeing what people have built.
yeah. But like, where would? I know that there's so much more to explore though.
Let's see. Well, this one said to go the other way, right? So maybe down here.
No.
Nope, maybe not.
There has to be a way to get this over though.
Maybe not.
Like.
I wonder if I go back into this frog.
So maybe you use the wand to attack that thing?
Go ahead, give it a shot.
Hold on.
You try with the magic wand.
Wait, okay. How do I move again? Shoot. Wait. It's not. I can't.
Oh no.
I can't move.
Oh no.
can't
Let's try another one. Which one do you want to try?
The angel one.
Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let me see what the. Oh, I have to download.
Oh, it's doing something.
It is doing something. Together. Control both. Okay. Where's the more information?
Yeah, it does HTML, so it'll load here in a second.
Okay. But I wonder what are the, you know.
What are the controls? Scroll down and see if it's still there.
It doesn't say anything.
Oh, it
It just
doesn't.
says keyboard.
It looks like it's just gonna be movement, so you're just gonna move around, not have to click or anything.
Yeah, probably like a WASD.
Mm-hmm.
Just gotta wait for the. Oh. Okay, the art's pretty good. Okay. Oh, error keys. Okay. Oh, there's training. Okay. These error keys. Okay, I actually have these error keys.
Oh, they move at the same time.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, so like move them all to the right.
Okay. Oh, that's great. I got those 3 stars. Continue. Okay, against. Oh, okay. Alright. So the tutorial's pretty good. Complete boxes, spaces.
There you go.
I'm a pro at this. Okay, only one who can push red boxes. Oh, so she's stuck. Huh. Oh, it counts my moves? I didn't even see that. Right here. Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's probably the other.
Wait, how do I...
Oh,
hold on. Oh no! I killed her. Okay. Okay. I think... No.
What happens if you just get her into her spot? Like, would she fall off anyway? Yep.
Yeah. Okay. But how do I flip her? How do I... You're definitely there. Oh!
There you go.
There we go! Oh. Alright, I see that. Okay. I want to retry. I figured it out. Wait, shoot. Wait, no, I messed up. How did I do it? How did I?
You had that angel in that top corner right above the deal and moved down to get him. I don't know if you can get there from here.
I don't know either. I ruined everything. No.
Try restarting it.
Oh, I can, yeah. Okay. Alright, so I got her in there. And then here. Flipped it. And then. Wait. Shoot. I can't figure out how I did it. Okay. Okay. No. Oh, dang it. Okay.
Try going. Go back.
Back.
Go up.
Up.
Up. Left.
Left.
Left. One more left.
One more left.
Right.
Oh, okay. Wait.
No wait. You gotta have your. You gotta get her above the. You gotta get the demon above the angel.
Yeah. Oh. Like
Oh, there you go.
Let's see. Okay, we got it. I'm a completionist here.
You've got this. I've got to head out. Bye everybody.
Okay, yeah, fine. Bye, leave me. I still got one sword. Okay. You know what? That's fine. Oh shoot. Okay. He'll stick in place for 1 minute. Got it. Okay. Reverse house switches directions. Down is up, left is right, etc. Okay. Okay. Oh shoot. No, dang it. Oh. No. Oh my. Oh no. Oh, this is awkward. You know what? I'm gonna go to a different game. Cause this is hard, and I'm not a fan. Would you like to try?
I played it.
How do you do this? How do you do this one?
Oh,
Okay.
this is the
Yeah.
level I got to it. I was like, okay, what am I stopping for now?
You know what? Let's go to sponsors. and I'm here with not Parker.
Hi, my name is Jacob Sharp, and I'm a sophomore here at the University of Tulsa, and I'm a CSG major, and I'll be filling in for Parker for us today.
Yeah, because Parker decided to leave me.
He had to leave us.
Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna get ready for our next presentation with Daniel Jackson.
Daniel Jackson is a Tulsa native, and he is the founder of Create Something Interesting, which is one of today's sponsors. He's released several video games on both Steam and Xbox. One of which was a game called Solos that made it to Xbox and actually won the CSGC competition in 2019. So he's here today to give us a presentation on his new game Blitz League and to get some feedback from our audience.
So take it away, Daniel.
Right on. All right, everyone. So the main talk of this is a pitch for a company or the future of my company. And then afterwards, I want feedback on the pitch / the game idea, everything and all that. But this is the rundown of my pitch. So I'm Daniel, and then I work at Create Something Interesting, and our focus is going to be making competitive video games or esports. So our past games are Ramify and Solos. These are ones that we've made before. These aren't esports, though. These were just games that we made because we thought they should be made and they were important, and we put them out there in the world. So who is the actual customer that we are going after with competitive games? So this is the micro look at that of one person that we found. His name's Sam. He's 15. He has his own phone. He's an Xbox player, and he likes to play games with his friend. Or friends, not friend. So now the macro side of this, showing like who all is involved in the esports industry. We have GameStop, which is opening, all of their stores are being converted to esports areas, and there's also esports arenas and stuff like that opening up all over the place. High school esports teams are opening up, and then college level. TU has a whole esports area and stuff like that, and then ORU is another local college that just opened up one about 2 weeks ago. And so knowing who your customer is great, but also knowing what they value is really important. And so they, on the college varsity level college program, they wrote the actual values here so that you could see what those values are and what they want inside of their games. And so that's showing you the market of who we're actually going for. So there's 120 million Steam users and 111 PlayStation users and 110 Xbox users. We're not going after everyone. We're going after roughly 20 million people have the potential to want to buy this game. And so that's what we're going with. So esports in general, this is a web that is supposed to be overwhelming because it's showing you the network of everyone that's involved in esports. If it's players to doctors to media, anyone, you have a place in esports, and this is kind of a machine, and that machine, it eats esports games. So it wants those esports games so that it can build up, people can bring out, do tournaments, to live streams, to local events. On every level, there is some form of competitive thing going on, even news. So who's actually watching games? So this is August 2019. So this is 1 month of people that were watching esports. So we're not even talking, we're also talking about people watching it, not just playing it and not just buying it, and how far of a reach esports can actually get. So friction with current esports games. The first one is the install size on a lot of them are too big for especially high school computers and older computers. You want something that is roughly 8 gigabytes in size. We talked to an all esports team, or all girls esport team, and there's also the notion that it's mainly female, and we want to make sure that there's female representation in the game. There's also parents, a mom and dad that we talk to, they'll say like, oh, there's language in certain games and we don't want that involved, and then they're too violent. One of my favorites is Rainbow Six, but you can't really show that in a high school, you know? Not knocking that game, the game's actually amazing. Things you can't Google. So we went out and did some research. A lot of indie developers that are working in possible esports games, they're just hoping their game becomes an esport. They're like, oh, I can do this game and it has online play.
it doesn't actually mean they're building it for esports. And there are also indie developers that are making these games, and they run into the issue where they're saying, hey, I hope this game finds a market, whereas we're saying, no, these are the people we want to make a game for, and we're going to build it for them. And any game that is getting traction right now, they're really just getting it out of luck because the timing is right. So the big example of that is Splitgate, was just two guys that said, it'd be cool if we did Halo and Portal together, and now it's kind of taking off that there's an esports scene, but the game, it's not taking the wildfire that it should be for what it actually is, because it's actually a great game. So other things we couldn't Google. When you're talking to players, they want to have the path to be the best. So not just, oh, we joined this league or team or anything like that, but in-game they want to show like, hey, we're the best, and they want recognition. So inside the game, you need to have those sort of things. And in-game, it's basically like, hey, the player of the week, this guy's doing really great. Or this girl, you know, she's the best defense, things like that. Those are sort of things you'd want to show off. Players need training and recovery. So these are athletes, so a lot of times they train, but a lot of tutorials aren't built around, hey, this is how you train to be an esport athlete, or e-athlete. I don't like that term, though. And so those are the sort of things we want to do in-game, is have that sort of training there. And then also a lot of people want to be famous, and you need a platform for that. And so you want to make sure in-game, part of the recognition thing, that they're able to like showcase who these players are and what they're capable of. So why is now the best time to make an esport? Because all the people that can build it, there's a ton of people at this school that are capable of building this sort of thing. The people that want to play it are available. They want these sort of games, they're on Steam, they're ready to go buy it. And then the network of people that actually want to watch it are available. Between live streams like YouTube and Twitch, it's really easy to say, hey, like people want to watch this sort of stuff. And then my prediction is it's going to happen to an indie team that's working on a sort of esport game just by luck, because there's so many people wanting this sort of product made. So what's the product we're going to make? We're calling it Blitz League. So it's 4 players versus 4 players. It's a non-violent first-person shooter, meaning instead of shooting bullets, we're going to shoot giant dodgeball-looking things. There's a demo here in a second. So the idea is there will be levels built, and balls will be dropped on the bottom, and then players will gather them and then work their way to the top towards a goal to shoot them into the goal. And then you have to go back down. And then throughout the level design, you have what are called congestion points that you'll either have to be offensive with or defensive with. So there's tons of layers of difficulty within them. But what are we going to do different? It's got to be team-based everything, team-based tutorials. How many games do you go and you play and you're like, oh, I'm going to join up on this team, but the tutorials are all single player, the tutorials aren't team-based. So you need, hey, I'm in with a group of people and we're going to try and beat this tutorial. And those are the sort of things you want to have right out the get-go. That way teams can actually build day one of it releasing. Team-based leveling, so instead of, hey, I have my rank and I'm this, your whole team needs to level together and have a system in place that says, hey, this team will be a good match against that one. We were going with the Elo Milo for initially, but then there's also team skill was what they use for Gears of War, and we felt that that was another good option. So that's still in the works. And then team-based matchmaking, that also has to do with the Gears of War version of matchmaking and leveling system. So to sum up this slide and sum up the game in general, if it can be done as a team, it needs to be in this game. And if it can't be done as a team, it shouldn't be done. So why will people buy this game? The community of people, they're already ready for, hey, they want to join teams or they want to be, they're already joining real life esports teams. So it's not that big of a stretch for them to join a fictional one online. The price is really great because it's actually going to be a free-to-play game. We're going to be using what are called vending machines, which are not loot boxes, even though they will look like loot boxes. I'll go into that later on. And then timing is right because people, they keep going for free-to-play games and they want multiplayer games. Accessibility, we're trying to put as many accessibility things, everything from hearing impairment and vision deficiency. I think that's how you say it, right? We want to have those sort of things. And chance and opportunity, we just feel like now is the time to strike on this sort of game. Okay, so we're talking about the game. So here are some GIFs that may show up, may not. These are the balls that have to be collected. So as a player, you go around and then you collect balls. You can only hold 10 at a time, and then you have to shoot them. So the rules behind them are you shoot them, and then after 7 seconds, they start glowing. And then at 10 seconds, they then explode. So these are kind of either a weapon or a curse for the player. Well, I say that. So if I shoot one of mine and one of my teammates runs up to it, it's technically a passed ball, and so they collect that ball. So if I want to shoot up to a higher ledge, I just either shoot them or near them, and then they can collect that. But if an enemy hits it, they are then frozen for 2 seconds in time. Vice versa, if you hit one of the enemy balls, then you are frozen for 2 seconds in time. That's the dodgeball aspect. So here is a passing happen. The guy shot, and then you're able to collect those balls. And then the next one is this is the actual freezing process that happens. You're frozen and you can't do anything, and it's very scary because you're in an online game and you're like, hey, I can't move, but it's part of the game, it's not a glitch. And so the last thing that we wanted to include is just because we're trying to make things real, like, oh yeah, it needs to be a sport, it needs to do this, we need that like extra oomph. So this is athlete vision. So this is where any object in the game, you can focus on it. So if you want to focus on your teammate, you can do that. And then if you need to shoot and pass to them, then it'll automatically go that way. You have the part of the athlete vision is you have your goal here. You can press a button at any point and it'll always go to where the goal is, so you're never off on that. And then the other one is, say if I go to an enemy and I need to like hunt someone down, I can track on them and then go with that. And then down here, I didn't make a GIF for it. You have a stamina bar so that you can sprint, jump higher, things like that, and use up your stamina bar. So here is the concept art for the logo that we first came up with. On the left is the drawing that we had made, and then on the right was the first 3D render of it. These are concept art, both the 2D and 3D are concept art. That's not final art. This is the concept art for what the outside of a stadium should look like. It needs to be kind of futuristic, kind of cool. And then this is the inside, where you can kind of see the different layers of things, and then the goals up on top and things like that. This is a rendering of, this is some other show, an anime, but someone made a 3D model of it. And this is sort of the quality that we're going for to give you an idea. Because it needs to hit that 8 GB limit, it has to look cool, but it also has to be lightweight. And so we felt like this was that happy medium there. Okay. So things we're going to do that other people wish they'd thought of. The first one is train, not just single player training, but also team-based training. Perform, this is where as a single player, you can basically go in and join any match and then find other players in a quick match sort of way. But what it also does, it allows you to go into, if anyone's hosting a training mode, or not, a recruiting mode, for their team, you can play with them and kind of get an idea of like if they're really good or not. And you do that and perform. And then recover. So this is something I think is really important. You want, once someone's done with a game, to have a series of mini games to measure if they're actually improving, but also if they're approaching injury of any kind, like, hey, you've been looking at lights too long, let's do some lighting tests and stuff. You guys understand what this means? How many of you guys played like WarioWare or any of those kind of games? Anyone? Okay. So the idea is it's like WarioWare sort of tests to make sure, hey, this person is doing okay and they're actually not hurting themselves playing this. So it's kind of like, you know, that seizure warning at the beginning of a game? It's kind of like we turn that into its own game to make sure that they're okay and not having issues. And then tournament mode. So this is where you would go through as a team and you rank up as a team, and that's where you'd go through in tournaments. The next one is you need 24-hour customer service for solving issues in the game and tournaments, because you want to have a huge grassroots effort. A lot of times, any popular game, if you're having an error, you're looking at like a 8-hour turnaround time before you can get something that's not an automated message. You want to have that sort of customer service built in up front That way, later on down the road, when you're, someone from the middle of nowhere, Kansas, calls you and you're like, hey, we're trying to host a tournament, and get all that together, they're able to actually put it all together pretty easily. Spectator service, this is actually outside of the 1.0 version of the game, but you're able to watch games past and present and go through and watch those. And then accessibility modes, the outside of the built-in ones for, we're using Unreal. They have the vision and the hearing ones, but also a one-button mode where you're actually able to play the game with just one button. That's really complicated, but the rundown is, so say there's a team of 4 that's playing another team of 4, there's actually a hidden team of 4 that will be camera ops. So like when you're at a game, you know how you're looking out there and they have camera people? You'll have people that can't interact with the game, but they're camera people, but they can use literally just a thumb, and it's their own circuit that's kind of built up inside the game so that anyone, no matter what issue they have, can still play the game. But also when we go to tournaments and stuff, they'll have their own kind of side league where they get to record the big tournaments and stuff like that built in. And then build teams in game. So this is a small sentence that comes with a huge price tag. So basically the idea is I want to be a team owner, which means I can find 20 players in the game and then build out a clubhouse with those people. There's a lot more to that, and that is outside of the 1.0 version, but I just wanted to have it in there. Okay, so local tournament outreach. Have you guys ever heard of Magic the Gathering? So like whenever you go to any of these card shops or anything like that, they have plenty of advertisement, and they've reached out to mom and pop shops. No indie game has ever reached out to a mom and pop shop and said, hey, we need to market to these people so that our grassroots effort of this game can last for 10 years just because they threw a sign up and they're like, oh, do you still play that? There's things like that you can do and then keep those relationships that no other game company's doing. Also, we want to release within 2 years. That way it's harder for other people to catch up because there are going to be clones. Everything in a video game, as soon as it comes out, within a week, someone's copied it. As soon as you release a trailer, within a week, someone copies it and brings it out. And then the other thing is we'll be building up the brand as we are the esports makers of the future. All right. So, friction in the competitive space. Not being able to be in most high schools, we want it at the 8 gigabyte minimum. It not being broadcast safe. A lot of games, not just language or violence, but also the way the lighting works and stuff like that in game. Only certain levels actually work for being broadcast safe, and then certain colors for things. A lot of the engine takes care of that for you, but you want to make sure that it can be on TV. It's not the end of the world, but eventually we'll be in a place where an esport is at the Olympics, and you want to make sure that that game is ready for that. And so the Olympics sent out a list of what they think would be broadcast safe for a game, and then we're going based on that and just building within their guidelines. And then it not being diverse enough. So this is actually twofold. I ran into a marketing game with my other games. If you guys can even remember what those games look like, they were like the second slide. They aren't really rememberable. They don't have that silhouette of like, this is Mario, something like that. So we want 12 different characters that are the default characters that are diverse. So someone, when they're playing it, they're like, I want to be like that person. Because the whole idea, it's like you're a superhero sort of thing. Like you have the athlete vision, you're the best. So you say, hey, I identify with this person, so I'm going to go and do that. And that's how we allow for pretty much anyone in that marketplace to be part of the game. Okay, how do we get paid? So there's platforms, Xbox, PC, and PlayStation. They all pay out once a month. So that means you only get paid 12 times a year per platform. So just heads up, when you make money, that's what happens. So there's other things we can do to generate more income. The first one is licensing deals with actual brands to bring those into the game, doing in-game promotion and out-of-game promotion, and then transmedia storytelling. Since we have so many characters that we're going with, you can build up books, comics, toys, TV shows, things like that. Okay, cool. All right, so how do we make money in-game? The idea is this. You have your clubhouse because you're a team owner, and you buy vending machines. And then if you buy a vending machine, it's $10 in the real world. And say there's 100 items in it, but you have to spend so many balls per item. So you get it at random and you have no idea what it is. The vending machine does run out. It's not a, oh, you always only have a 0.2% chance of getting the thing you want. As long as you keep going on the vending machine, eventually you will empty the whole thing out and get all of the items in it. But the vending machine is going to come out so fast, it's going to take you a while. How does that in-game currency work? So you buy the vending machine, and that's real-world money. It's not backed by anything because you can't sell or re-exchange the items. If you lose a match in Blitz League, say you scored 50, your losing team did 50 points, right? That's all you got in that match. Then no matter what, even if you lost, you still get 50 Blitz points towards spending in your store. If your team wins, you get all of your team winnings plus however many the team lost. So if the total score for a match, one did 100, the other one did 100, then you get 200 points that you can then spend in your store. So the more you keep playing and the more you win, the more that you can spend on your vending machine. The next one is the season pass. That's not like a normal season pass. This allows you to do a lot of online features that you couldn't. This is what gets you to be on top. So this allows you to be the team owner, to run your actual clubhouse and say, hey, you're on the team, you're not. So when someone's like, oh, some esports league that's some big hotshot, they're going to have to spend just as much to start a team in game as you are. But also you can make your own logo and branding and then upload that in there based around what in-game objects are available. And you can only do that. And so that's going to be a premium price, but it's going to be during the season. So and the season usually lasts around 4 months. Okay, so near future. So within the next 300 days, the idea is to get our old game solos on new platforms, basically PlayStation. So that's PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5. We already have the game built, it's all ready. We're just porting it and then bringing in income. But that also gives us the ability to be on PlayStation for Blitz, which we really want. Then the next one is our first test run into esports will be available tomorrow to play on the show floor, and that's called Bout. And you'll play it and you'll be like, this is an esport? And it's like, no, it's all the workings and all of the ideas of an esport in there, but we're going to give it as a free-to-play game out there in the real world, and then it'll have also DLC. So all of the questions of like, how are we going to do online play? Bout is where we're going to figure it out. How are we going to do matchmaking? Bout is how we will solidify the actual idea. So we're already doing that. This is just if we get funded. So after, that's going to take roughly 60 days to get those things done. And then we have 300 days from that point to get Blitz in early access. That's just on Steam. That's the only platform we're worried about right now. And then roughly 600 days after that, or near the end of year 2, that's when Blitz would have its 1.0 release. And so I got who's going to build this future. Got Elliot's on that list. And then these are other people that have given some form of, hey, if you get funding, here's my price for how much I will want for a year, and they will join and jump in there. And so things that are past 3 years, so things that we can't really be like, yeah, it's going to happen this many days in and all that. So lots of local tournaments trying to build that up. And then the biggest one is the Blitz Open. So this is where anyone that is a team owner, their team can compete and be number 1, so our Super Bowl. And then lots of cosmetic DLC or lots of vending machines, which also means lots of income. And then director mode. So this is where you can actually, when you're playing the game, you can record where everyone was at any point. And this was sort of like a set. So then this allows you to have like your own editor in there where you can go in and then rewatch any of your old clips, part of the spectator mode. And then see like, oh, what was this person doing wrong? What was this? And then your team can review all of your games together. And that's part of that premium package because that involves a lot of data stuff. The one stick mode is years on, and then clubhouses, and then spectator mode where you can just drop into most games and just watch them live. And then because we're making competitive games, that's the idea in the future, we want our fighting game that we've been working on, and we've been running into issues on its prototype. And so that's why it's a future game and not the game we're going on now. The puzzle game, so did you guys even know that Tetris is a puzzle game? I mean, competitive game, that there are tournaments? Okay, cool, just making sure. Not everyone does. So there is this weird market that's not huge, but we feel we can be king in for competitive puzzle games. And Bout is also our first stab at that, and Bout is not it, just so you know. But we are continuing on so that we can finish it and be done with it. And then our racing / our Mario Kart game. All right. So sources, there were random things and statements that I said, so here are the sources for those. And then this is the demo video. Oh God, I don't want to listen to me. I mean, like, I don't want to hear that. So basically, this is the rundown. Can you guys even see that? So this is me shooting the ball so that you guys can see. You kind of already saw the GIF of that. There's a bunch of stuff. There's a reason why I cut up the GIFs, because it's 2 minutes and all of that. While I'm saying this, I run the Unreal Engine meetup group. We meet every third Thursday, and we built this in Unreal. I'm just biased towards Unreal, so shout out to them. So the next thing, you collect the balls. They have dispensers around, so depending on where people keep going, we'll make the balls dispense. They'll kind of pool in areas, so the game kind of shifts, like, hey, we've been going here and using all of that pool of balls, so let's go to this other area. This is the athlete mode, where you can see that. All of these are bots. These aren't other people playing. This is not live right now. We just made a bunch of bots and had them running around. This is that focus tool, so it's focusing in on that one ball, and it looks pretty fluid. Like, it keeps looking at it, and, you know, like, I'm not using the mouse at all. I was just jumping around. That's one of the bad guys, and so I shoot. Oh, I don't shoot them. But they're running around. They have their own AI. The quick lesson that I learned about AI, it's not about making it look smart. You just can't make them look stupid. These guys are actually really stupid, and all we figured out to do was make sure they didn't run into walls. That's all we did, and it works fine for right now. Bots will be used for testing, but the real goal is to always have real people and go with teams and then ranking teams. And so that was that. So that was my info. So that was the end of the presentation part. And then I was asking for feedback from anyone in the audience on either the game idea, the pitch, anything that you're like, I didn't like this, you need to fix this, or I didn't understand that is what I was going for. So what do we got?
So with those sort of like clubhouses, are those going to be similar to like guild passes and something like World of Warcraft or like?
Yeah, but it's limited to only 20 people.
Okay.
So it's not like a huge guild where, especially like EVE Online has like thousands of people in theirs, right? The idea is you keep them small so that, hey, they always feel like an exclusive club. To go over in this, because it's just one of those like weird details, because the way the game's built, we have practice modes. Well, you can just do hey, here's people in our area, I just want to play games with friends. You can then set up a practice mode with them and be like, okay, we're going to run a game, but I want to watch you on this team, you on this team, and then like switch it all up so that you can just see. Yeah, custom games like that are all peer-to-peer that aren't on taking up our service. They're just out there playing. So there'll be people that are playing the game even though it doesn't look like they're spending.
The like saving replays of games, are those to be saved on your end or on the player's end?
So we're going to do on our end which is why it's not in the 1.0 version, because it's like this needs to succeed in order for that to happen. It was more because you use Unreal. Like Fortnite already has it all built in already, where basically it's looking at like, hey, here's your X, Y, and Z of this person, put them here and stuff, and then you just know the size of the maps and stuff. That's how that would be stored. But it's only storing those values, it starts filling in those characters. It's actually not, it's like 3 kilobytes, I think is what it was, and then what's big is you have to have the game installed and stuff like that. So it's not big, but the idea is after so long, it's going to get big and need to be its own. And add up quick. And so.
Do you have any ideas for like how you're
what I've been basing everything on? they let me make a game on the Xbox, so I've just been biased towards Microsoft. Like, oh yeah, they'll do this, and so they have. I can probably look it up here, but they just unleashed their new Azure gaming stuff that like you can with like this is a $200 laptop, right, for presentations. I can go on there and go to one of their virtual machines, and it already has like Unreal installed and all of that, and so they're giving indie developers, once you're accepted in the program, like I think it's like 4,000 hours per person for free that you could just go and work on your game. But then that's just for that. So for other services, they have a bunch of free ones. And so what they have is a thing called PlayFab. And PlayFab is a live ops service that allows for all of that stuff to be stored, but also your economy. Like, yeah, this person did buy this, and this is their login. And it's like, oh, this person played on PlayStation, and then they went over their Xbox. You know, oh, let's make sure their information is correct because now they're playing on a different platform and stuff. And so Azure, PlayFab, Microsoft, that was my current answer. Does that clearly answer your thing? Or I feel like I went on a weird path there. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a really useful part to have to care about the safety of the players.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question is, how are you balancing that sort of directed mindfulness with the flow state that is so important, especially in esports games?
So as far as I've gotten on that is I have a book. This is not the answer you're looking for. I have a book from an esports physician that was like, hey, these are the injuries people are getting, and I was trying to avoid those injuries. How we're gonna do out the game, like I have a list of like, what's 100 possible games that we could do, and I have like 50 of those, but actually implementing and testing and prototyping, none of that has started yet. It's been, can we make sure the bots work and stuff like that? So it's, it hasn't been prototyped yet, but the quick one, it's actually, the other companies that did it really well was Complex. They're an esports or Complexity. They're owned by Dallas. What do you call it? Dallas football? Cowboys, there we go. They own it, and so at their place, they have entire rooms for them where they have like iPads that's like, okay, put your hand here, go to there. Can you stretch that far? You know, try and do these things and like memorization things and stuff like that. So they had their own custom software built in. And I saw that after I was reading the book, and I was like, well, why can't we just do this in a game? And then I looked into it, and I was like, you can do it in a game. So that kind of, I don't have a clear answer on what the path for the mindfulness of it is. It's more if we notice, hey, you're seeming aggressive or something, to be like, hey, maybe you should go into recovery mode and call it a day. I don't want to go down the road of like Wii though, where they're like, did you ever do Wii Fit? And it's like, hey, guess what? You know, 9-year-old, you're fat. You know, you don't want to go down that road. You want to make sure it's like, no, this is about you recovering and stuff like that. And so right now it's theoretical and like not a prototype. Well, I've done different mini games, but not a clear like, this is going to be in there and that's going to help people. Part of the idea behind funding the game is we can put a doctor and actually hire someone to be like, what do we actually want for that side? What's up?
So where do you think these like recovery games are going to take place? Are they going to be like in the clubhouses, or are they going to be?
No, it's going to be included. So like when you open the game, 3 windows that are like train, perform, recovery, that's like the opening. So it'll be like Blitz League, train, perform, recovery, and then you kind of figure out where you want to go from there.
Okay, so you have to actively go into recovery mode, or?
You have to, for initially, yeah, you would want to go in there and do stuff like that. But we're trying to figure out like, we don't have like heat maps to be like, hey, we're noticing you're not shooting as fast as you used to, so maybe you should do a test run and stuff like that. Doing that with the live ops, because you have to do it like, or you guys play Call of Duty, or you at least know it exists, right? They monitor all of that sort of stuff, so we're just basically going to say like, hey, it looks like you're having issues. And then also, I don't know if, I mean, it's not considered health, so we don't want it to like go down that road of like, hey, you're not supposed to be tracking that sort of information and put it in a game that's public, even though, you know. So there might be weird laws. Yes.
To be fair, like casual players won't be interested necessarily in maybe like going into recovery mode.
Mhm.
You know, I've never like, yeah, look at my computer and like, yeah, I think I'm done after playing before. However, it's, you know, it's
Yeah.
not ready to play, ready to play. But I know for certain that esports captains are going to be like, do you have your recovery mode turned on? Are you like following the recommendations and stuff like that? Because yeah, because you can't get fatigued for this playing.
Yeah.
And some people play with wrist, some people play with like arm.
Yeah.
Some people have the volume turned up too loud. Some people have, I know people like actively turn on a colorblind filter if they're not actually colorblind.
Yeah.
Because they think it, or they see it better or whatever the case.
Uh,
I think having it as an option would be best simply because, you know, esports captains are going to encourage their
Yeah.
people to like, go into recovery mode if it's recommended to.
Yeah.
If the game's telling them like, hey, you know, something's not right.
I have a question. Have you been injured playing a game? I know you don't have to answer that if you don't want to. Okay.
I do play for like Steve and like all of that.
Okay.
So I am used to like, you do get like strain.
Yeah.
You damage your equipment from like pressing hard or anything.
Right.
Especially on controllers. But I did have a question about your observation stuff.
Yeah.
So what was the one button play? What was that?
So the idea behind that is you're on a controller, right? And then you have just the thumbstick. So I can move a camera around essentially pretty easily. I don't have to have any other motor function like that. And then you would basically be moving the camera around inside of the game and following players, or like, hey, let me line up and get a shot of these people, you know, things like that. That would help you. And then you would have like its own scoring system. When we tested it, basically like there's like a center thing to be like, a cone to be like, hey, do you have like 2 or 3 people in the frame? Okay, now move it over here and get 2 or 3 people. And so whenever you're doing like a broadcast, you're essentially watching those people, and then they get rated on afterwards on their performance.
Okay. You said you watched Siege.
Mm-hmm.
I really like their spectating stuff. Like,
Yeah.
go back and replay and like see exactly spectating in first person and third person seeing
Right.
this is the lineup you had, this is what you're doing wrong. But that having good, you know, good spectator or good recap, like for any sports, having good recap is very important. But casters' ability to spectate the game.
So the quick answer to that is third-party services. There's like 2 that I think are trustworthy, and one of them did end up working with Siege. So like when you go on there, you know how you can like press little buttons and like look at the layers of the maps and stuff? That's all a third-party service. And then I don't know what engine Siege was in, but they made it sound like Unreal and Unity, you can use their plugin and all of that, but it's an expensive plugin. But at that rate, if you're getting that many views and stuff, it's worth it. So also the one button thing, that was mainly for people that are doing casting and stuff like that, so that they can like go in there and watch that sort of stuff and compete in there. But it's not set in stone yet. As you can tell, it's just a prototype and an idea, and like, hey, we're hoping this happens. You know. So, oh, what do we got?
What's your projected break-even point on your year timeline?
So, break-even point, I wasn't really worried about like it's going to cost this much or anything, but if we were going to do it all the expensive way, it would be 10.7 million. So that's all of the servers for multiple years. That's hiring a bunch of people, and they get raises, and the quick answer is for every employee that you have, they're going to cost you 10 grand per month. That's whether or not that's building cost, insurances, what's the other, 401ks, things like that. It doesn't mean they're actually taking that in. That's just how much they're going to cost per person. So for the amount of people that we were expecting to build out the game and take 2 years to get to release, and then 5-year plan of what it would take to actually make it through everything and like really take it off, was 10.7 million. But I mean, like if you have like, oh, we go to early access, we might be breaking even in early access. Then we work on the next one. So I mean, the quick example would be we get funded for 10.7 million, and then it's it only costs however many sales that is of a mixture of the 2 owners certificate and then the vending machines. And so the exact number, we would have to look at it. And also, It doesn't mean we're actually going to spend 10.7 million. It might just be like, hey, you're given 3 or maybe only no millions, and that's what you have to make this game with. And so you make it work based on that.
Who did your concept art?
Which one?
The 2D and the 3D character model?
Okay. So 2D was this girl named Lydia that's in town. The 3D was Marco in Brazil. This was stolen. This was a Fiverr project of a guy that all he wanted to do was landscape, like interiors and stuff. And so he did a really good job. And this was stolen off ArtStation. And I say stolen because we're not using it anywhere. It's just like representation and stuff. Is that okay? Cool. I don't think I have any more after that. So that's all I have. I went with. Thank you guys for your feedback. That's what I know. This is like a selfish talk. So I was like, I need your guys' stuff. So thank you for joining in on that. So I'm gonna say thank you for allowing me here and all that. Yeah.
So what did you think about that?
I really like the idea of having like a game that's just kind of like designed entirely around esports and kind of making that like work very well for current esports athletes, but also for people that just like want to get into that but don't like have an easy outlet, because that's a hard thing to get into if you don't have like a foot in the door already.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I really did feel like with it being free to play, it definitely like a lot of people are gonna like want to be at least want to look into it, you know.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that the reason why like me and my friends play Fortnite is because it's free to play and we're broke. So
Right.
it's just like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? We might as well get into this one too as well.
Yeah, I think accessibility options can go a long way for all sorts of games, but I think especially for esports, being able to like give anyone the opportunity to be able to compete and play and enjoy all the opportunities esports provides, I think is a really nice opportunity they provide.
Honestly, I'm kind of excited to see this, you know, in its future developments.
I will definitely be keeping an eye on it.
Yeah. Well, that's all for now, and now we'll go to our sponsors.
back, everyone.
We're gonna just give a quick recap of what we've seen so far before we get to our last presentation. So far, from what we've seen was, of course, the president of TU. We've also seen Cassandra Burrow with the virtual simulation for the nursing. And we've also seen, of course, like level designs, different like art styles with AR, comic books. That was my favorite.
The AR one was interesting, yeah.
It was by far like something I haven't seen in like a long time. And then we've also had, of course,
Blitz League just now.
Yeah, Blitz League. We can't forget about that one. That was one of the most recent ones. And then we've of course had the Game Maker, where we actually got to see a different engine that you don't really need to know code to actually, build a game. And soon we're gonna go into how to get your games on Steam, so then you could be able to sell them and make money. So what would you like to see from it?
I'm excited to hear about this one because I had made a lot of like small projects here and there with game making, just kind of for fun. I've never really like taken that step forward of trying to put it on like Steam or going to other platforms. And I really have no idea what that process looks like, so I think it'll be really interesting to just get like a frame of reference for like how much work it is, and like what level your game is to be at before you start thinking about that and those types of things.
Definitely, it's going to be an interesting learning process, and I mean, hopefully it's going to be like, of course, educational for us, and then whenever we make our own games and then want to release it to the public, we would already know what to do, and we wouldn't be like stuck like in like a really weird position.
Right. I think there are a lot of people out there that like have game projects like floating around they never quite finished, and I think making it easier to understand like what you can do with that and where you can like put that out for the world to see would be really nice for a lot of people to be able to know how to do that.
Yeah, because most people, I believe, rely on itch.io to actually like get their game on like with some traction, but like I feel like the end level is to get it on Steam.
Yeah, I think Steam is kind of the holy grail of PC games today.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I feel like it's just going to be like an exciting little thing because it's just something that you're going to like want to know as you make your way as an indie developer, or maybe like in an actual like game company. But
yeah, I think with Steam kind of being like the end of your game cycle, where did you get your interesting games at first?
My interesting games, that started back whenever I was like young, really young, like probably, I don't know, 10. But it was just like from then on, I just always wanted to like figure out like how do I make some sort of like place in the whole gaming world, because one, I'm just one person, and two, like it's just like as long as you have like a good game there and a lot of like people like seeing it, getting good traction, that's all that will be worth it,
Yeah, I think that is one of the coolest things about like video games just as a medium in general, because it doesn't really matter like who made it. It's all about like the power of the idea and how you're able to like make it into reality. And I think that's becoming more and more accessible to more people nowadays too, with game engines being easier to download and a lot of them free now. I think giving that power to more people is really interesting because, like you said, anybody can make a game.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of like learning the skills to kind of build up to that, and then just publishing it.
Yeah. Well. I mean, in one of our classes, actually, we're working in kind of like groups, kind of like just like a small team. And my game that I'm working with in my group is like kind of like a racing game, but it's like Endless Runner, but with cars. And it's basically like you're in a heist, and as you're the getaway driver, and so you're trying to avoid, of course, the cops, and then like avoid the oncoming civilians as you.
We've named it a Timely Demise for now, and the idea is that it's a puzzle platformer where every time you run through a level, your run gets recorded and then played back the next time you run the level as sort of like a clone. So let's say like the first time you run through a level, you run straight across the bottom. It'll restart that level, and then you'll start in a different spot, and you'll have like an old like clone body of your player running across the bottom, and then you can use that as like a platform or to step on buttons. And so you really have to plan ahead, try to think about all of your moves well in advance.
That's an interesting game. I don't think I've actually heard of like a game that would do that. Did you get any inspiration?
We took actually inspiration from a music video. One of our other teammates had been like listening to the song and had watched the music video recently. It was like I saw this idea of like these clones. They keep coming back and they keep like stacking each other like to make a tower to climb out of his lap. And we thought that was just an interesting idea of like kind of using clones to your advantage, and that's something that can be gamified that we had never seen before. So we thought that'd be an interesting idea to run with.
Yeah, honestly, no, like, I think that is an interesting idea. Like, I mean, of course, my inspiration for my game with my team, it was, of course, Temple Run and Subway Surfers, because they're, of course, also endless runners.
Sure, yeah.
And also, like, Subway Surfers had that coin thing, and Temple Run also has those coins things, and you have to, like, avoid those weird monkey things. I can never figure out what they were.
I don't know what those are. I think that's a mystery.
Yeah, but honestly, like, I'm excited to, of course, work with my team and then hopefully, like, make a game that not only we'll love, but, like, also other students as well in our classes.
Yeah, I think, it's really interesting to work, like, in a team versus working individually. Because a lot of times it can be easier when you're working on your own to just, like, get an idea and just stick it, straight from paper to a project. But I think when you're working with a team, even though it's harder sometimes to synthesize ideas, the like final result usually is so much more interesting and nuanced just because of like the different talents, different ideas that people can bring to the table.
Yeah, and whenever you bounce ideas off of like other people, you could like of course find some, oh, this could work, but you could improve it upon with this, and you're just like improving upon one idea and it gets bigger and bigger, and then you're like, yes, we could actually work with this, and then you could just go off and just run with whatever you came up with.
I think it definitely helps too to be able to like split up like the work between people. Because like me personally, I'm a big programmer. Art is definitely not my forte, and whenever I make games alone, it always I'll have like great mechanics and stuff, but the art is not what I'd like it to be. And so having people that are talented in art and people that are talented in programming, all these different areas of game design, having them come together and kind of like all put their best foot forward, I think is super exciting.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of you. I'm good at the art stuff, but the programming sometimes I can't really get it to wrap around my head, and I'm just like stuck. Like, okay, I see this, I have an idea, but how do I implement it? And whenever you have, when you have a good programmer, they're just like, I got you, and then you just see it happen, and you're just like, perfect, this is it. And it's just like, good stuff.
Yeah, it is nice how the kind of puzzle pieces fall into place.
Yeah, I appreciate like other people who have like these insane talents that they could just like bring into the table, and then you don't have to worry about it that much because you know that someone else could like take over and be like, all right, no, I got this, I could fix that, and then they'd be like, oh, okay, now I could add on to this because now we could be able to progress.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I think too it's exciting to hear kind of like pitches like with Blitz game and see like how people kind of like formulate those ideas in their heads of like they have a general idea for what they want, but they also leave a lot of like leeway for like he mentioned how he wanted to build out a larger team with people like working in different areas of the game and left some holes in the game design for people to kind of fill in their own kind of like personal flavor or brand and make it a more like well-rounded product as a whole.
Yeah, and then there's always room for improvement. You could always get like a new update with like new different additions that you could like see how the players could like interact with it, and then see how like, okay, what's the feedback,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I'm just maybe we should start small and just see like, okay, so we could take this thing and then progress, take it from here and then progress and then see where it goes.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, to bring that all back around, I think it'll be exciting to see how once you have all that groundwork done, how you can do something with it and show it to the world, whether it be through like Steam, like this upcoming talk's going to talk about, or through like Itch, Xbox, PlayStation. There's so many platforms nowadays that you can kind of show those like shared ideas and show them to the rest of the world and let people enjoy it. I think that's exciting.
In fact, if we want to, like, we should probably go into the segue of the like the presenters, of course. So of course we're gonna have Daniel Jackson and Elliot Ridgway, and of course they've produced Create Something Interesting, and also they're trying to ship 2 games on Steam and a game on Xbox One. So basically just going through the process of like this starts here, this starts there, and then progressing all the way to Steam. So,
I think we'll be waiting just a few more minutes for them to get started. But until then, thanks for sticking around the stream. Thanks for watching all day today. We've had a lot of awesome talks, and we'll continue to have a lot of awesome talks tomorrow. After this one today, we'll be wrapping up for today. But we have a whole slew of topics and ideas that people will be talking about tomorrow, and of course the exhibitor hall here in person if you can make it out to see it. I think it'd be really awesome to see what people have on display.
Yeah, definitely, and I believe some of them, the audience could actually like interact with them, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of people have their games out for people to like play, or like there are some people that are selling products or like showing off art and all sorts of things.
Yeah, and honestly, I would love to go see it, but I'm stuck as a host.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just you
Duty
know,
calls.
duty does call. But like, if I do have the free time, I'll definitely go and like try and look around and see, oh, which one interests me. Oh, which one like do I think is like really awesome, or like something that could just gravitate me to it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely be looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But I think until then, I think we're gonna go ahead and throw it over to our sponsors until the next talk. Welcome back to the stream, everyone.
All right. Again, we'll do a quick rehash of the next and last presenters for today. We're gonna have Daniel Jackson and Elliot Ridgway, who are gonna be talking about how to ship your games into Steam, and let's give it to them.
Kind of an arduous process to get your game on Steam. Not
don't know how to change frequencies.
I heard it out there. That scream, or whatever that loud noise was him talking, I don't know how to change frequencies. That's me talking now.
That's loud.
Oh, yeah, they heard it. Okay, so you might recap a little bit.
Should we just share a mic?
Yeah, let's just do that. I'll turn mine off.
If I just stand close to Elliot, does it work? I mean, we'll hear in a second.
Well, they seem to both be going in.
Phone with the Steam app, and then you need $100, and you must have some form of incorporation.
And we were talking about the assets that you need for your store. So this includes everything from game screenshots to the capsule images that make up the store page. And what I was saying, I think we were talking about how it's good to have like one piece of art for your game that you can just kind of reformat. So like something where it shows off like the characters and like the logo and stuff like that for the capsules.
For the capsule. Actually, I was doing, you do want something like a silhouette that shows exactly what your game is going to be. Like if you're a crafting game, you want a hammer or something like that.
Yeah.
My recommendation now that I never heard of this, I was watching other people explain like how they set up their Steam pages. You want to make a clickable logo or capsule. And that means, so the easiest way to test that is have like 5 capsules made, and then whatever someone would click on, that's what you should pick for your capsule. But that was outside of what we talked about. That was just, because we were doing this research and all of that, I looked into stuff deeper.
Yeah, that's a good point. Something else that is good to keep in mind is for the trailer that shows off your gameplay, you want to get to the gameplay as soon as possible. Within the first 5 seconds at the maximum.
Just avoid all the logos. If you're like contractually obligated to do something, just avoid the logos, go straight for it.
Right, because everybody, the first thing people want to know about your game is what does it look like, how does it play, that kind of thing, and you want to get them that information as soon as possible. So yeah, I think I was going to do this one. So once you've got your store page kind of situated, the next thing you're going to do is concentrate on actually getting your game on Steam. So this is the upload process of getting your game from your computer to the Steam servers. The first thing you're going to want to do is download the Steamworks SDK. And this is a package of applications that help you actually do that upload process. So if you're kind of a programmer type, you might want to use the command line version of Steamworks, where you just type in commands in a little terminal window and it'll do the upload process. There's also a GUI version of Steamworks that we're going to go over here in a little bit that will help you get your game files up on Steam. There's 2 important concepts to go over at this point. So when you're uploading your game to Steam, you're going to be working with builds and depots. So kind of the difference between the two is, I'm going to start with depots because I think that's kind of the more natural starting place. So depots you can think of as like the buckets on Steam where your game is going to go into, and this bucket will have all of your game files. So any the binary of your game, like a launcher application, whatever the player is going to download when they buy your game, this will go in the depot. But then on top of that, you've got builds. And so builds describe the different versions of your game. So like after you've initially released your game, for example, you're probably, players are going to find bugs, or that you might want to add a feature after the initial release. So to achieve this, you would create a new build of your game that would go into the same depot, but it is a new build that is distinct and different from the original build of your game. Every Steam game has its own unique app ID to identify it, and so this is especially useful for the scripts that we're going to go over here in a second that will tell Steam, hey, I am trying to upload this unique game that has this unique ID that refers to your game. So this is kind of the, this is a script that the Steamworks SDK uses to upload your game. A lot of this stuff you're not going to need to change, but I would draw your attention to line 3 in this script where it says app ID, and it has the number 1000 after it. You're going to replace that with the ID of your game. And then also towards the this would be for things like if you have DLC for your game, or if you are including a soundtrack or something like that. That would be when you would have additional depots to go with the game. And then this is a separate script that you're going to modify that has to do with updating the depot. So the first one was kind of had to do with specifying your app and what depots it's linked to. This is a second script that you'll update that actually configures the depot itself. The depot ID on line 4, that is a variation of your app ID. So Daniel mentioned that there are 9 depot slots for a given app. So what they do basically is they'll take like the last digit of your app ID and just increment it. So it'll typically be 0, and then your depot ID will have.
Your app ID is always 0, I think. And then,
is it?
Well, your first depot
is 1, right?
And then your other depot.
So 0 through 9, basically.
Majority of the time, you're only going to use the 1 depot.
Right, unless you're doing something fancy with DLC or something like that. And a lot of this stuff in this script as well can also be left as is. The main thing that you will want to pay attention to is the depot path on line 13. That would be where your game files actually reside on your machine. So if they happen to be in the same directory as the scripts, then the period is just saying, hey, get the game files from this directory. But if they're somewhere else on your system, you would put the file path to your game files on that line.
So this is the GUI version of all of that allows you to update your stuff. So where it says depot ID and build path and all of that, none of that is going to show up on here because this is a cleared one, and that's stuff you don't want announced to other people. Basically what you'll do is you'll log in here. You'll have to use your 2-factor authentication again. That's why I say that. And then you'll want to find where the SDK is on your disk and then put that in there. And then you want your app ID so that it knows exactly what you're going for and all that. You can't upload it to someone else's if you can't log in and stuff. So this is 1.9, right?
I think you want to do it?
Yeah, I thought
Okay.
it was, yeah. Okay, so submitting your game is its own project. Submitting your store page is also its own project. And then the third one is the actual release of your game. So we can't show what it looks like inside, so we just have to describe it to you. So there's 3 boxes, and then the first one is your store page, and you're going to launch that. And it comes with its own checklist. That's what Elliot was talking about with like the assets and stuff. Once that's done, then you can release your store page. Get that up as soon as possible because people can then wishlist your game or at least just look at the trailer or look at your stuff and get that ball rolling. Once you submit your game, they go through a series of tests and make sure, hey, does this game work? It's not full of viruses, anything like that. Then you finally have the release window, number 3, once you go through all that. Chances are you're going to fail something because usually majority of the time, like I uploaded my wrong screenshots. You have to be a certain aspect ratio. I accidentally uploaded the originals and I left my aspect ratio, the correct aspect ratio ones on the folder, and I realized I had screwed up. So Steam's going to give you feedback. It doesn't mean your game sucks or anything like that. It's just you want to make sure they're aware of it. And then once your builds are up, then you can start test downloading, meaning you can be like, hey, I'm going to go to this computer over here, log in, and download it from the Steam client and make sure it works. And then I think we're going Steam Keys is the next one, right?
Yeah. One other thing to mention on this slide is you should plan for about somewhere between 2 to 5 business days between when you submit your game to Steam to have them review it before you'll actually be able to release it.
Release that, and your Steam page will also take so many days. And I don't think you can do them at the same time. Like you can't just be like, here, review the page and the Steam game. It's like once you do the page, then you can do the game.
Yeah. So it's like an actual human has to look through it and make sure everything is okay. So that's why there's a little bit of a delay. So just something to keep in mind if you are planning to release your game on a certain date. Know that you got to work backwards a little bit from how long it's going to take Steam to approve it.
Yeah. There's actually been, you can go to the next page, but there's been issues where people were like, all right, guys, we're releasing on this day, and then they failed something, and they're like, just kidding. We'll tell you when it's going to release next, so we have to run into issues. We kind of tag team this one, don't we?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Do you want me to talk Curator Connect?
Yeah, you go for it.
So now we're kind of in the marketing phase of Steam games. We've got the game uploaded to Steamworks, and we've got the store page ready to go. So now we're going to kind of move into how do you market your game. So there are these people on Steam known as curators that have this status of they will review your game for free and post reviews of it to kind of help generate buzz about the game. Typically, they're expecting to receive at least one key to the game to get it for free, so that they can review it and then give you feedback. You want to be a little bit wary of curators because there are a lot of bad actors out there that will just take your key and run, especially if they're asking for multiple keys. So if you get an email, and you will get emails after your game comes out to say, hey, I need 10 keys to review your game. Those people are just, they're people that are trying to scam you, and you should not give them keys. Do you want to talk about Keymailer?
Yeah, so Keymailer is another third-party service that you have to pay for that works similar to it. But you can actually, and then Wovid is the other one. Say there's a streamer you like and they're approved and you pay the premium price, you can just offer that streamer, hey, do you want a key or whatever. So that it also goes into your people streaming your game, and like the big Twitch streamer streams your game, you're not getting sales. I know that sounds awful. But it allows it to get out there, and then there's video of it. And then you kind of have that cycle of like, hey, let me, you made this video of me, and let me put it on the page, like, hey, this person was playing. And Keymailer is an easy way to do that. Also, any of those people that are like, hey, give me 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so marketing and visibility rounds. Say you've just uploaded your game, and you've released it, and it's out there, and everyone's playing it, everyone loves it. Steam is giving you a visibility round where it starts going through the algorithm and showing to people that they think will actually buy your game. But you get 5 additional ones after your launch. Everyone gets a launch, and then you can use up to 5. And so the idea is, say you updated the languages on your game, and all of a sudden you're available in different countries, right? You can say, hey, that's available now, and then do a visibility round, and because you've just added those new people, it'll start doing that for you. And then you've done a festival, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, so Steam every year does this thing called Next Fest, which is kind of like a virtual convention for Steam games that are coming out. And the idea is to, you get on Next Fest, I think there's like an approval process you have to go through, and then, but you basically say, hey, my game is coming out, it gets included as part of Next Fest. You get to have your own slot for demoing the game to people and talking to people who are potentially interested in buying your game. And that one is done annually, I believe, but there's a bunch of other sale festivals that Steam does throughout the year. I'm sure we're all familiar with the Steam Summer Sale. There's also the Winter Sale, the Autumn Sale, and then the Lunar New Year Sale. I think those are the big ones.
Yeah, it's 4 big ones.
And then there's also some other smaller ones like the Halloween Sale. But those are things to watch out for as well. So you'll want to make sure that you put your game on sale at least during those big sales, if nothing else.
And then community, you can go to the next one. Community updates are, say you just update the game in general and you're not doing one of those visibility rounds, people will see that your game is active and not some dead game, that the devs are actually still working on it, there's things going on. Even if it's just like, hey, we did some minor bug fixes. Like example, Half-Life 2 was part of the launch of Steam, and they updated it last week and put in the community notes like, hey, we're still uploading this game, and that was, 17 years ago? Mm-hmm. So yeah, you want to put that sort of stuff in there. So keys. There are Steam keys. Do you guys know what Steam keys are? Okay, so you can request keys, but there are multiple types that you can request. The first one is a dev key, and it'll show up in red on there. So say I'm working on a game with Elliot, I can be like, hey, let me give you a dev key for this so that you can look at all the builds, everything like that, and be able to mess with the game. But then there's press keys, which is only the retail version, but you can get it early, meaning it won't be, because you'll have different versions of the game in there and stuff like that you can do. Usually people keep it just as one. And then the press ones would be like, say you had a bunch of Kickstarter backers or anything like that. You can give that out to them and they can play the game early. And then retail keys are anything after the game's released, just like here's a key, just here's just the plain ones.
So these are some things that are nice to have for your game that go sort of above and beyond the core game itself. And depending on who you ask, some people would say this is sort of expected and required for Steam games. So Steam achievements, this is basically just where you're playing through a game, and I'm sure you've all seen this if you've played Steam games. Basically, you do some kind of notable achievement within the game, and then the little gray box pops up in the bottom right corner to say, hey, you got this achievement on Steam, and it shows up in your Steam profile. Most modern game engines have Steam integration, so GameMaker and Unreal and Unity, I think all have this, to give you the ability to actually tell the Steam servers, hey, the player just got this achievement, go update their Steam profile. Cloud saves is another good one to have. So this is basically just saying when your player saves the game and then they shut the game down and they go play it on someone else's computer, their save file is still available through the Steam servers. And then controller support, this is a good one to have. So just to make sure that you're it kind of depends on the type of game that you're playing. Not all games are appropriate for controllers, but for those that are, games like side scrollers or RPGs or things like that, it's another nice thing to have because it shows up on your Steam store page. That's along with all the other facts about it. It'll say, oh, this game is compatible with a gamepad. So that's another good one to have just to kind of broaden your reach for the game.
All right, so I'm the Unreal person, so I gotta. If you're trying to get your game on Unreal, using Unreal, you want to go to this website right here. This is already outdated because Unreal Engine 5 is out, so they're going to have new information. But here's the big deal. So in Unreal, it gives you a thing called prerequisites. So if you install the game on someone's computer, if I just give you a copy, you have to have those prerequisites in order to play the game. Well, by default, Unreal adds those so that you can play the game, right? Well, Steam doesn't like that because you could be giving a virus or something like that. It kind of goes outside of their little area. So you want to make sure those are all marked on false, and then inside of Steam, you have to tell them which one of those prerequisites you want. It's like Visual Studio 2022 or whatever now, and something else. And
so on the Game Maker side of things, this is how you integrate your Game Maker game with Steam. So it used to be that you got this for free as part of Game Maker, but they recently re-architected how this works. And so now you have to go out and get an additional plugin for Game Maker that activates the Steamworks support. And so it doesn't cost anything, but you just have to go get it from the Game Maker store. I don't really want to go through all the details of how you set this up because it's slightly involved. I mean, it'll only take you 10 minutes to set this up, but essentially, it comes with a PDF, and you'll just want to make sure that you read through that to make sure that you run all the right scripts and get your copy of GameMaker set up to communicate with Steam. Some of the functions that are listed on here, these are things that you can call from within your GameMaker code to communicate with Steam. So Steam init, this would get called at the beginning of your game to make that initial contact with the Steam servers. And then Steam update would get called on every step of your game just to make sure that communication stays up with Steam. Set achievement and get achievement, these both do exactly what it sounds like. So this is what I was talking about earlier where something happens in your game and then at a certain point you decide, okay, well I want to contact Steam now and say, hey, the player just got this achievement, go update their list of achievements. And then file write and file read, this corresponds to the cloud saves that I was talking about earlier. So this would allow you to take your save file and then save it off to the Steam servers. And then when they're ready to load the game later, you would use Steam file read instead of Steam file write.
So this is a really big one, localization. How many of you guys have ever localized a game before? Okay, you have. So you guys understand the importance. So like, down here in South America, that's where all of my sales came from. I have like maybe 10% came from America, not even. And so you want to make sure your game is localized and ready for anyone that's a potential Steam user because they're all new markets that you can get your games to. And you want to make sure that as many people as possible can actually purchase the game and enjoy it and stuff like that. And so I highly recommend localizing. And you can see how many, there are a bunch of people in America, but there's these kind of green numbers, that's millions of people there that are potential buyers.
It's also good to think about this pretty early on in the development of your game. So I'm currently going through the painful process of combing over all my code and trying to find every string piece of text and changing it to an internationalized version of that string. So it's good to take care of that up front if you know that you're going to localize it. Most modern game engines can help you out with this and make it pretty painless, but better to do it earlier rather than later.
All right. So now we're in like the weird stage of stuff that it doesn't really deserve its own slide, but there are thousands of Steam features. So the first one is stats. That's like any information that can exist in your game. You can make a stat of it, and then based on those, then you can put leaderboards together. So you can have like, hey, here's the top 100 players, and then put that on the Steam page and stuff like that. And then there's Workshop, which neither of us have done in Workshop. But it's this whole world that exists that people can upload stuff and have their own system for organizing things or modding your game or hacking your game, stuff like that. And for some games, it's almost required to have that. And then Space War.
Space War 480, this doesn't have anything to do with the previous 3 bullets, but we just thought this was a fun little Easter egg to throw in. So if any of you are up on your video game history, Space War is one of the first video games that came out in 1962. Steam has it set up so that if your game is not yet released and you are actively developing your game and you're communicating with the Steam servers, it'll say in your Steam client that you are playing Space War. And if you see anybody else out there like on Discord or whatever, and it says that they're playing Space War, then you know that they're a Steam developer working on their game. So that's just a little fun fact. I can do this one. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but once your base game is out there, there's a lot of stuff you can do to kind of prop it up and provide additional content for the game. DLC, this is just, would be like additional levels, additional bosses, something like that would tack on to your original game, but would be a separate purchase. And this kind of gets back to what we were talking about with having multiple depots for the same app. If you made DLC for your game, this would go into a separate depot, and it could. So what that would achieve is it would allow you to download the DLC separately from the original game, or you could download them together if they're in a bundle or something like that. Same thing for the soundtrack. So I would highly recommend doing a soundtrack for your game on Steam, because most likely after you finish the game, you'll have all of your music files still kind of lying around with the rest of your game files, and so pretty much all you got to do is just package that up and do a zip or something like that and put it on Steam. And so now you've got an additional revenue stream of people buying the soundtrack in addition to buying the original game. Demos, these are really good as well to have for your game. So most of the clicks that you get on your store page are going to be people who just kind of look at it and then just move on. Most of those eyeballs are not going to actually buy your game. So a demo is a great way to get it into people's hands because everybody likes free stuff. And it's actually kind of amazing just the difference between how many free demo downloads you'll get versus how many purchases you'll get. It's like an order of magnitude greater. So it's a great way to get a sample of your game out to people so they can try it out and see if they like it and wish list it and stuff like that. And then all of this kind of wraps up into bundles. So once you've done all of these additional pieces of content for your game, you will want to consider doing a bundle for your game. Steam makes this stupid easy to do. You basically just have to hit a few buttons and it'll package all of your different depots together into a bundle so people could get like the base game and the DLC and the soundtrack and get it all together in one purchase, maybe for a reduced price, 10% or something like that. And then patching, this is just kind of a heads up that yes, you will probably need to patch your game after it comes out because players are going to find bugs that you didn't anticipate. Steamworks makes it really easy to patch your game. So basically all you've got to do is go in and modify your game files, make a new build of the game, and then you're going to run it through Steamworks SDK again, either using the command line tool or the GUI. And then Steam is actually great in this regard. Once you've pushed it through a second time and you've made a new build of the game, it's actually going to diff your game files so that players don't actually have to download the entire game again. It'll actually figure out which bytes have changed and just download that to people's machines for them. So you don't have to mess with any of that. All you got to do is send Steam the new game files and then they take care of the rest.
Okay, so getting paid on Steam. Usually it's based on whatever day you signed up your account. That's when they'll do it. Instead of being like, all right, it's the first month, everyone's getting paid. It's like there's so many millions of transactions going through, and they have a bunch of others. So it's usually whatever day you signed up, that's when you'll be getting paid. Want to be weary of their sites like G2A, like, I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of it. Basically, like, you can put a key on there and then sell that key, which sounds great, but then those people that like got free copies of your game, then all of a sudden they'll go and be like, oh, let me go sell that game. And then they're getting money and you're not getting anything. So you want to be careful of those sort of places. But then there's the opposite of that are places like Fanatical that and Humble Bundle that allow you to sell so many keys in bulk, and then they distribute them in bundles with other games and stuff like that. And then at any point you can do your own sale. So yeah, there's the summer sale and stuff like that, but if you want to be like, hey, you know what, in 2 weeks I want to put the game on sale because I want more revenue, you can go ahead and do that, and it's super easy.
I actually just recently did this for my first Steam game, The Idiot's Tale, because it's just sitting there not doing anything. I was like, I'll put this on sale. And just by doing that, like I didn't have to do anything except create the sale, and I got 15 additional purchases of the game by doing that. Do you want to talk about the long tail? Or?
Yeah. Okay, so there is everyone's like, oh, our game, it sucked at launch or whatever, we can't do that. You're going to make way more money as long as you keep at it and like keep updating it and stuff like that. Every year I sell double of what I did the first year because putting it on your own sale. The big thing that happens is anyone that wishlists the game, they get an email and they're like, hey, that game you want, that's on sale. Whenever it does like the huge sales, it's like, hey, these 200 games on your wish list, they're on sale, and yours is kind of lost in the mix. So you kind of get this pattern going like that. And it sounds weird, but you're not actually trying to always get sales, you're trying to always get wish lists. Because it's like a spiral down, because you have people that they're going to buy the game when it first comes out, or they'll buy it as soon as they find it and it's full price because that's what they want. That's the kind of game they want. Then you have the people that they'll buy it at 20% off, then 25, and so on. And so you want to stair step down your game over time, and then keep putting it on sale at random times, and it generates a bunch of cash. So
yeah,
a bunch of. You hope it's a bunch of cash.
Right, and so the reason that that's called the long tail is just that you sort of have this mental image of your game first comes out and it's a huge amount of sales at the beginning and then it trails off. In reality, most of your sales are going to be in that long tail after the initial launch. So.
All right, so Elliot has a gift for some of you.
Yes, just as a thank you for getting all the way through our talk, I actually brought some of my own Steam keys if you want to try out some of my games. These will also be demoed tomorrow in the exhibition hall, but just as a thank you for coming, if anyone is interested, I've got Steam keys here. So I guess by show of hands, does anybody want Steam keys? Okay, everybody. So here, you can take the mic if you want to do questions.
I'll do questions. I will have my keys tomorrow. I packed them with all the other stuff that we're presenting and everything and left it in a box with everything else. And this is also not, Steam related, but if anyone has an Xbox, we have Xbox tokens for the game that we released. That's also a CSGC winner. So who has questions about making a game or putting your game on Steam? Or did we answer everything and you're like, I'm going to go do it today? Yeah? Has anyone put a game on Steam before? You guys said you'd localize, but have you put a?
Started the process, but didn't quite get there.
Okay. Nice. Right on. You're Chris, right? Never mind. Then you're not who I'm thinking of. Okay. Yeah. So what games you guys made mobile? So what happened to the launch to Steam? What went wrong? Okay. Yeah. My condolences. Nice. They might be hiring here if you're looking for a job. So, is anyone actually like, I want to make games and be indie game and like go through that? Like you were who wanted to hear this sort of talk? So you guys, okay. So what are your guys' current plans to sell games then? Well, hold on. What's your current plan to finish your game? Don't worry about selling it. What's your plan to finish the game? If I know that's a super. Does anyone want to answer that? No. Feedback? Okay, so how many of you guys are showing your game that you have sort of finished off tomorrow? You are. Where's yours? You are. You just don't. Okay. Okay, so my recommendation for tomorrow is find any little kids and let them play it, because they don't have the filter. Because like if I go up and play your game and be like, oh, I'm so glad you're working on this game. This is going to be great. Anyone under the age of 10, that's who you're looking for to just tear it apart. So
They'll find bugs that you never even thought of.
Oh my God, yeah.
They'll break your game, which is what you want.
Yeah. In hindsight, what you should do, I know it's way too late, I mean, it might not be, you might, get a webcam and then put that in front and record that while people are playing and then the gameplay, and then just review the footage later and be like, oh, this is what was going on here. And you can look at bugs and stuff of like how they actually did stuff. I also don't recommend testing normally at these things, test differently. I mean, really, you can find free people, right? Like, I'll play your game and test it for you, if that helps. So who else is, do I need to wrap? Yeah. So
The backlog is empty.
So your game, it doesn't matter when your game is ready to get on Steam. It matters when your store page is ready. You want to get that store page up now. So if you have sort of concept art, sort of anything that's, then your store page isn't ready. But if you have something that's like, yeah, this is what it's going to look like, kind of, get those as soon as possible and get some sort of page up there and approved, because then you can update and be like, hey, we changed the characters and now it looks way better. And then you can build up those wish lists and things like that. So it's not really about when your game is ready, it's about when your store page is ready. I'm assuming you have something to say.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to comment that, early access is a thing. And so, like, the game doesn't necessarily have to be feature complete to put it out on Steam. You could say, hey, I'm doing early access, or hey, this game is in pre-alpha and I'm looking for feedback on it. And this is, particularly useful if you're doing a game like, I don't know, like No Man's Sky, or just, some online game where you want to load test it with players. Like, that's another reason why you might want to do that. I mean, doing like early access has its own, kind of pros and cons. So that's, just it's another avenue. If you like, you really want to get the game out there and let people play it, even though it's not necessarily done, you can just say it's early access, and that's another route you could take.
Also, the dev keys that you can request, you can request dev keys and just pass those out to people that are going to try it out, and then no one can see it. And then if you want to, you can be mean and like take away the key or whatever, I think, but I wouldn't do that. So, okay, so the too early would be prototype. Like if you have, like you can play the game to beginning to end and you have some form of art in there, then you're good. But if you don't have at least one level vertical slice like this is done, then you're probably too early to release on early access. Also, if you're going to release on early access, you can't promise anything anymore, because it used to be like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and like Steam is like, nope, you take all of that out, you say every feature that's in the game right now, and you can put on your wish list of things you want to do, but you have to put a disclaimer that these things are not going to be in the final game. You run the risk of that. Like what you're buying now is the end game, and you take that risk.
It's also probably worth exploring the demo route if you're really wanting to get the game out there in front of people. You don't necessarily have to say it's early access. You can just say, here's a demo of the game. So for example, one of the games that I'm working on that's not finished yet, MonCon, is out on Steam, but it's just a free demo that you can download. So the full game is still being worked on, and it'll be done someday. But right now you can go out there and get the demo and play it and see what the game is all about, even though you haven't bought it yet.
And then another, do you guys know what a vertical slice is? Okay, so it seems like most people do. I didn't years ago. So it's one complete level that would look like all the art, everything. Like you can ship that one level as your demo, that vertical slice. That's what you want as a demo. But early access, you have a bit more leeway because they expect things not to be done and stuff like that. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Come to conferences to... The best marketing for Steam is releasing your game and having a game available, because then they know exactly what they're buying. There's no second guess or anything like that. You can sit there and run Facebook and Twitter campaigns and stuff like that. Great, but until the game's out, it doesn't really matter. At least, I mean, I'm going to be proven wrong. Well, this game did this, because all of the games have done something different. But I would say you can do stuff, but I wouldn't do anything paid before your game is that way. When I say paid online ads, I would go to conferences like this and stuff like that to explore that option. What about you? You got any marketing tips?
I would just echo what you said. Coming to conferences like this are really valuable because not only are you getting eyeballs for your game, you're also, if the game is playable, then people can play it for you and get that free play testing that we were talking about earlier, so you can find bugs for free, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You guys set up surveys or anything for player testing, that type of things like that?
So I don't recommend player testing like, oh, let me find this. You're just going to find general stuff and general feedback. The first thing you're going to find is how are they going to incorporate multiplayer. It doesn't matter what game you've made. They want to know how you're going to do multiplayer, which is funny because most multiplayer game, like couch co-op games, don't actually sell that well. So that's a whole thing. Yeah. Which one? So you know what the smallest one is? Of sales, like the small is platformers. Yeah, puzzle platformers, like tiny. Like if you're gonna go there, go to a console if you're gonna do that. I don't care. I'm still working on my platformer for stuff. I have like those plans, but yeah. So also marketing your game on Steam, it's also different. You can look at what the most search tags are in like most wishlist games and kind of get an idea of like what games people on Steam are actually wanting to play. And then you'll kind of get an idea of like, realistically, it's like simulation games are what people want to play on Steam. So games that people would play on Xbox are completely different than the games people want to play on Nintendo. So you kind of have to know what your platform for Steam is. And then you also kind of shouldn't care about it because the more places you release your game, the more income you can get, which means you can make another game. I feel like am I running out of time? Like I feel like I just keep going.
I think you got time. Yeah, we got like 20 minutes.
Any more questions? Are you guys good? All right, well, I'll say thank you for listening to the talk and all that, and
Yes,
thank you to the online audience out there. And so we'll kick it over to you guys. Passed out all the keys.
Yeah, well, two.
You could totally give it to the host, you know?
We'd like to give one last thank you to Dave and Elliot for the Steam keys and also for their awesome talk. Thank you guys. And thank you to all of you watching both here in person and online. It's been an awesome day here at CSGC. We've had a lot of interesting talks, but that's only half of it. Tomorrow we're going to have a lot more on offer.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have, of course, the exhibitionist thing, and we're definitely going to, like, want to see people interact with the games and, like, be able to just, like, you know, have fun and just you know, go out there.
Yeah, so we'll be excited to see you all and here in the exhibition hall tomorrow. We'll have a lot of people showing off their games for the contest and a lot of other awesome opportunities here to come and meet people in the gaming industry and just people interested in video games and gaming in general. And then we'll also have more presentations tomorrow over in the room over there or on the live stream on the YouTube channel for those of you watching online.
Yeah.
Thank you all for watching. And as we sign off, I think we'd like to send it to our sponsors one last time.
Yep.